Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Forest. I am your host, Sarah.
And I'm your host, Brad.
And this is the first time we will be opening up a Star Wars High Republic phase book discussion with you folks. Now, there's an asterisk there in that, like, Star Wars announces what they want to announce and does what they want to do. And I hope to God that we are wrong. And we get phases 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're doing this until we're 80. Okay. But as it stands, we have phases 1 through 3. And we are on phase 3, wave 1, the Eye of Darkness. Yeah, it did take me almost a whole minute to get to the book title. That's fine. We're just vibing here. Okay. No, seriously. It is with a bittersweet opening here that we say that this is the first phase opening after, like, doing this for almost 3 years already. So weird.
It is weird.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll do a phase 4 that's all Acolyte tie-ins. Who knows? But we're here.
We're here.
The Eye of Darkness by George Mann. I'm so hyped for Trials of the Jedi phase 3. It is going to be a time. So we're here.
We're here.
1 year later, relative to our characters, 2 years later in real life. And oh my gosh, how are you feeling? I want to ask you first, like, how does it feel? We already previewed phase 3, which if you haven't listened to the episode, listener, go check that out. Follow us on our socials, etc.
We've
Find
talked
those episodes.
for 3 hours. So it's not like we haven't talked about phase 3 before, but now we've read the book and now we're talking about the book itself. So it feels, I don't know. Like, the High Republic has been such a journey because, you know, it was initially going to start in August of 2020. And I got that poster at C2E2 2020, which was like March 1, guys, of 2020. I still have it. It's like a relic of a different age. But
it's a collector's item, to be clear. You should get that framed for sure.
It's framed. It's been framed. Yeah. It's odd. It's odd to think about how much time has passed, you know, since that, but also since January 2021. And I'll speak for you. We are both in very, 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 very different emotional places. I think personally and with Star Wars when the High Republic started. And since then, I think we have probably, again, I'll speak for you. I think so. I hope so. I think we're both in like a lot better mental place and, you know, personal place and are just like living life a little bit more joyously than we were in like January of 2021. But also, like, I just think our feelings about Star Wars are much more comfortable now than they were then. I think we were both in a bit of turmoil then. Post Tross, which wasn't our favorite, kind of set me adrift personally. And like the High Republic really dropped me back in. And now that we've podcasted about these books for over 50 hours worth of
officially
published podcasts
as of phase 3 preview episode, we hit the 50 mark,
which does not include all the times that we've discussed it off the air or we've discussed it with others or that we've just thought about it. We've spent so much time thinking about these characters and the stories. And so to be back with these characters after so long, I feel like, you know, I just had gotten used to the limbo, you know. There's like you just kind of get used to waiting. I think we live in like an immediate now society, but like, you know, that's really not always how it's been, and especially not with Star Wars. So, you know, back to the waiting game, it's kind of par for the course. And it is weird. Even like being a couple weeks past having read the book, it's weird to be like, oh, okay, I know the next chapter for these folks actually, and I don't have to speculate it about anymore because they've told me. And I can still think about the spoiler, death of Loden Greatstorm every other, you know, day. But now we have some of the consequences, you know, past the fallen star. I don't know. I'm talking a lot at this point, and I recognize that, but you're asking about my emotional state, so I have to go through, the entire history of my entire life. So,
Clearly, yeah.
No, yeah, it's weird to be back. It's delightful to be back. It feels comfortable to be back, and I feel really grateful for that because, for so long with Star Wars, it's kind of been like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like this thing. I don't know if this thing is going to be for me. I know the High Republic is for me, and in the story so far, the High Republic has not so egregiously let me down that I feel like I don't know, like where my love for it has been cast in doubt.
And I don't think it will.
I don't think so either. I hope,
I don't think it will. And that's kind of the cool thing about it because like you said, we were both feeling adrift back in 2020 and, pandemic and so on and so forth. And I think for both of us, this was an anchor and it became an anchor and it allowed us to start thinking about Star Wars more analytically, like not only just having a lot of fun with it, but also like kind of rethinking some of the themes and like what we thought we knew about Star Wars. And that was some of the, like the freshest ways that the High Republic was coming at us. It was challenging us and making us reconceive what we thought we knew. And there's not a lot of Star Wars that really do that. And I think partly it's because the High Republic is so separate from the Skywalker saga. It is so far in the past that it allows us to take a step back and really ask ourselves some like existential questions that we will be, I'm sure, addressing a ton throughout phase 3 within the Nameless and the Jedi and that fight. Yeah, it feels good. And it feels good because it's been almost 2 years since we've been with some of the characters we're going to talk about today. And the fact that we've like been on that journey, waiting 2 years to think about Elzar Mann, to think about Avar Kriss again. We went through phase 2. Phase 2 was lovely. We had a lot of great conversations, a lot of amazing characters that we may never and probably won't ever see again. Who knows? The future is always in motion. Who knows?
Phases 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So you never know who might pop up. But I think it's so cool that we had that wait. We were kind of worried about going back to the past to then come back to phase 3. And I think it makes the wait feel like the return to these characters makes the wait feel worth it. It's like, oh, I feel so much more gratified because I waited and because I had that separation and because I had to think about what that outcome and what that future was for so long. And now we're getting those pieces. We're filling in the gaps with the Shadows of Starlight comic. We're getting the Eye of Darkness. We're about to get Escape from Valo. We're going to get Defy the Storm and see what Avon Staros has been up to, and so that's so exciting that we're just fully back in it. And I think we're talking a lot about the emotions of that because it is the last first, as far as we know, for getting into a phase. It's the last time we can say, hey, we're back to this phase. Like we're back here.
Right.
And we're going to be saying we're so back, baby, a lot throughout phase 3 coverage. We got, we're so back, baby. X is the key to all of this. So-and-so is missing, presumed dead. Those are our phase 3's 3 key phrases. And I'm really proud of myself for not messing that up.
You did a good job. Yeah.
But if you're a first time listener, buckle in because we have so much fun. We have a lot to talk about today. It is going to be a really enjoyable phase 3. We hope you stick around with us because we love these books as much as the next person. And it is our Star Wars, as much as Andor is our Star Wars and as much as The Last Jedi is our Star Wars. It's all Star Wars, but there are some Star Wars that really resonate with us very specifically and emotionally. And it's really cool that the High Republic is part of that for us and keeps us anchored and keeps us excited. And I cannot wait for The Acolyte next year. It seems like that is the next show on the horizon. I cannot effing wait because, oh my God, it's going to be my whole personality. Vanessa Rowan live action. There's just so much. There's so much there. But any other thoughts? Any other thoughts before we start to get into the spoilers of the book and start just diving into it?
Oh my gosh. Any other thoughts? Nope. We'll talk about them.
Talk about them. All right. Awesome. Well, as we do with every episode, we have an independent bookstore of the week, Sarah.
We do.
Before we want to dive into Eye of Darkness. So what is our bookstore this week that we're featuring on the show?
Our bookstore this week is actually a bookstore that I went to not too long ago. I had the opportunity to find myself in Nashville for the first time, which was cool. And I got to visit 2 bookstores, and I'm going to talk about one of them here, and it is called The Bookshop in Nashville, in East Nashville. Now, I gotta say, the bookshop, not great for SEO. So you're going to have to write the bookshop East Nashville or the bookshop Nashville to get where you're going.
It's giving like, hey, I want to watch Star Wars Resistance. Let me search Star Wars Resistance on Google and see what comes up.
That's exactly it. I understand why we name it this, but it's just not great, on the SEO situation. But it's okay. It doesn't have to be. It's not everything's about SEO.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this bookshop is such a cute little shop, and it is lined with shelves, and then they have books stacked on top of these bookshelves. I'm like, how do you even organize these books? But it's a really small shop, so everything is like really highly curated, and they have like really interesting organization throughout. And so if you are in the Nashville area, it's a place I highly recommend stopping by because it's super cute. They've got fascinating selection of books. Like I found a book called The History of the Barricade. It's literally a niche history about the barricade.
Wow.
And I also bought Nerd Adventures in Fandom. Let me get the rest of the subtitles behind me. Adventures in Fandom, From This Universe to the Multiverse by Maya Phillips, which I've been wanting to read. So I bought that there as well. And they have a website. It's thebookshopnashville.com, and you can see some of their new releases, signed pre-orders, things they've got just going on in their store that you can also browse their books online. One thing that I thought was, or two things actually that I think that they do that are really interesting. If you're in the Nashville area, they have a silent book club. So every first Wednesday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m., you can go sit among people and read your book quietly.
I love that.
And I think that's cute and fun. And I like that a lot. The other thing that they do is called the Lit Click, which is a monthly blind date with a book, which is curated by the bookshop owner, Joelle. And so it's always a paperback and almost always from an indie press. So I think, obviously we're talking Star Wars books. We're talking Del Rey. We're talking Penguin Random House, which is like the biggest traditional publisher there is. But there are so many great books that are coming out from indie presses that don't get the same quite, money or attention behind them as anything from the big five publishers. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was really interesting. I looked through some of the past selections when I was there, and there were some really interesting picks. So that's it. That's the Bookshop Nashville. I had a lovely time and would go again.
Thanks for sharing.
Yep. Thank you for letting me.
'Tis the holiday season, so if you're thinking of getting a book for a loved one or a friend, we encourage you to find a local bookstore in your area and try to shop through there if you can, because those bookstores need your business, and what a time to get it is this time of the year, especially. So with a High Republic book that just came out, so that's a perfect opportunity to buy it if you haven't already read Eye of Darkness. Which, why are you listening to this episode? Go buy it. And then come back. Also, I would not do my duty as a local former indie bookseller if I didn't say, please be nice to your indie booksellers this holiday season. And all retail workers, for the love of God, please.
Absolutely. Obviously this is their busiest time of year. So practice. I mean, this is a reminder for us just as much as anybody else, but just practice a little bit of generosity this holiday season. It's cold out. Nobody likes that. If you live in a warm place, it's warm out. Everybody does like that. Boo you. Anyway, I'm kidding. That being said, I think we can jump back into the Eye of Darkness.
Hell yeah. I'm ready. Full disclaimer. Right. So this is going to be a full spoiler discussion for the Eye of Darkness. We also are throwing any story that's come out from phase 1 or phase 2 on the table. It is free for spoiler territory. So like if we just learned about a listener who started with phase 2, which is like really fascinating to us, that like somebody actually started with phase 2 and is like doing the chronological timeline order of reading. And so now we want to be conscious of like, if you're doing a different reading order and maybe you haven't like read phase 1 or something, this is everything's on the table basically. So just putting that out there, full disclaimer. We don't want to accidentally spoil anything for you if you're doing like a machete order that we we don't know about yet. For the
I also did already talk about the death of Loden Greatstorm in this episode.
There was that. We don't know who that is. It's fine. It's great.
Who is he? I've never heard of that guy before.
So
yeah, no one ever somebody picks up, Light of the Jedi for the first time, and I'm like, this is Elzar, this is Avar, this is Buryaga. And this is Loading
This is Loading Great Storm.
Can't say anything more.
Don't tell the kiddos watching Young Jedi Adventures. Don't tell them.
Oh my gosh. You're going to fall in love with him and then you're going to lose him.
There's a whole generation of children that watch the Young Jedi Adventures episode with Loading Great Storm, and they're like, that's like their Luke Skywalker, and then they're going to get old enough to read Light of the Jedi and Rising Storm, and it's going to be like, no, not Loden.
We're already like, oh, not Loden. We've been like, oh, not Loden for like over 2 years at this point. And it's funny. Like, I think the oh, not Loden will just endure forever. It's kind of, to me, like Loden, I know this is not the topic of this discussion, I'm sorry, but like Loden Greatstorm's death is very much like the Luke, I am your father. It's like one of those like shocking spoilers, but like I can't believe it that it happened, and I will think about it all the time, and it is so pivotal in my life sort of a situation. I feel so safe.
Yeah, I remember where I was when I read that. So
me too. I remember the photos that we took. Like, I can't find them in our chat, but I can remember your face so vividly.
Yeah, well, we'll find them. We might have to do a little bit of scrolling one day, a little vigorous scroll through the photo library of our chat. So
of our like, you know, how many years at this point running chat of like, you know, thousands of media files.
It's going to be about a 3-year scroll. So good luck.
Right. Godspeed.
That being said, we are now entering the spoiler zone. It's kind of like the occlusion zone, except we spoil everything. And
it's constantly expanding.
It's a little more fun too, as well. And there's a lot of eggs. There's a lot of eggs in the spoiler zone.
Lot of eggs, and less dictatorship. Except that it is our podcast, and we say whatever we want to say because it's our conversation. So there's like a lot of dictatorship happening, but we hope it's not like a mean, evil dictatorship. We hope it's like a friendly. A friendly dictatorship? I don't know where I'm going with that. Just disregard.
I will say, on the topic of eggs, you know, we came out of this book, we were like, I'm not sure how much egg talk there is. And then
like,
as we were going,
I don't know if we're gonna have a conversation without egg talk. We know how to talk without egg talk.
Yeah. And then as we were going back through, we're like, holy crap, there's enough egg talk in here to feed a family of 7. So we're going to get to that. And I can't wait.
But we should also mention that.
Do you want to mention this up front?
Yeah, like I feel like we should
preface the conversation.
We're recording this on the 30th, and there was an article that dropped this morning, and Brad called me as I was putting dry shampoo in my hair, literally, this morning, and was like, "Sarah," I was like, "Why are you calling me at 8:50 a.m.?" And you're like, "Sarah, I gotta read this article to you," and I was like, "You have 5 minutes because I have a meeting at 9."
So I'm skimming. Okay. I'm skimming. I'm going through it fast.
Right. And you're reading this article about the Nameless and about phase 3. And we're like, oh shit. And then I'm like, gotta go to this meeting. Bye.
Just leaves me.
And that's that until one of our listeners in our Discord posted a screenshot from that about Claudia. And then you called me back at like noon.
Why don't we read right from the article? You want to read it? You want to read the beginning
you go
here?
For it. You've got it.
So yeah, we go back, and again, we missed this because we were skimming. We were close to the meeting time. So it starts with, what scares the Jedi? The question has been at the core of the entire Star Wars The High Republic epic, and the answer just might be the Nameless.
I mean, first of all, obviously, yeah, like absolutely,
yeah.
we know, okay, and then here's the key part.
Teased in Claudia Gray's Star Wars Master and Apprentice, and fully introduced in Phase 2 of the High Republic, the Nameless are creatures that feed on Force sensitives. And I had to read that about 6 times over to fully register what I was reading after that person in our Discord messaged it. Sarah, and then I had to think about it for another minute before I got it. So Brad, only through by cleansing the sin done to the Nameless. Oh no, sorry, I'm messing it up. What am I talking about? I said the whole thing perfectly earlier today, and now I'm in a jumble of emotions. Can't even believe it.
Only through the sacrifice of many Jedi, May the order cleanse the sen, done to the nameless. The past is not past, but it sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it threatens the galaxy entire. When the force itself sickens, the past and the future must split and combine. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the force be restored. Thank you.
I cannot believe it's so casually dropped in here that Claudia Gray teased this in her book. Again, the prophecy that Sarah read is this like very glup shitto thing, like just like the Kazrat device.
I mean,
a glup shitto.
Thank you.
Is a glup shitto Star Wars object, prophecy, whatever you want to call it. And
that we have latched our entire lives onto, as you know, if you've been to an egg talk before.
Yeah. Because I remember reading that back in 2019. I'm like, what the hell is this about eggs? And then as we're going through phase 2, because we had only really ever heard the leveler in phase 1. It was just the leveler. And as we get into phase 2, it started to become about the nameless, and the nameless are the being, all the beings.
Like,
and we're like
there's the leveler and then the nameless.
Yeah, like
and
it's all
like
the
leveler is
different.
one guy.
Yeah, the leveler is like the OG. Like that was like patient 0 kind of.
Right.
And we're like, nameless. That sounds really familiar. And then we went back to this prophecy in Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice.
You did. You picked this one back up. I'm giving the
sure.
credit to
It was a collective effort. And ever since then, we've been basing like all of our conversations around it. Our thematic purpose of the High Republic, what the end game is, how it ties into that question of what do the Jedi fear, which is like what kicked the whole storytelling initiative off. That was like the founding question of this whole thing. And we've based all of our speculation around that idea that this prophecy connects to the nameless and it connects to the High Republic. And so if that's the case, and if that's true, if our hypothesis is that does connect, what does the rest of that prophecy mean? What is the sacrifice done? What is the sin done? How do you cleanse the sin? Et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of where that's egg talk. That is egg talk because it's an egg prophecy and it's a funny name. And so when you hear egg talk, that's egg talk. And the fact that we just casually today we're like, yeah, no, that's right. That's correct. Though that's a tease. That was a tease back in 2019 is insane to us because we were like, what if we're on the wrong track?
We've talked about this prophecy, which I mean, very intentionally could have been written in this way. And I have no doubts that it probably was just because, Claudia's a great writer and the Star Wars authors are smart people and all of that jazz. Like it could have been about the Order 66 and the clones and
that's what people
the
thought,
nameless,
for sure.
right. Like, and that sort of stuff. But we were like, no. And, we tinfoil hat galaxy brained into, I mean, it got at one point where I was standing up and talking about stories from the Bible and like, it's gone on many different paths at this point. But, yeah, for it to be just like, hey, or here's this tease, right? Like that was like an intentional connection that we're making and not just like us up at 2 a.m, frantically theorizing.
And literally last night we were talking and we are like, you know what? If we're totally wrong and this is all garbage, at least we had a good time. And then this morning we're like, we're so back, baby. It was a tease. It's all connected, and I think like moving forward in Egg Talk, like I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled. I feel like a little bit more confident. I feel like we're not delusional. I mean, we are, but we're having a good time doing it. And
right.
I feel like
it's all for fun.
Now our conversations of Egg Talk kind of have a little bit of more weight and credibility behind them because I feel like, yes, we've established that prophecy is about the nameless. It is the prophecy. Now the chosen one part of it is interesting that's attached to it. And I think you could make an argument that whatever happens in the High Republic with the nameless unbalanced the force. And then the force was like, we need a chosen one to bring back balance. And that's kind of the impetus for Anakin Skywalker being born, right? We're more so focused on everything before that.
We also know, and I don't want to dive too far into this, but like we also now know that like Planet X is a force nexus, right? So that becomes, I think, a pretty key player in the conversation about this. Anyway, we had a crazy day. We had a crazy day of us being like, I mean, literally last night, I was like, I feel a lot of doubt about this on a regular basis because Brad, he's like, it's all going to Delna. And I'm like, I don't know if it's going to Delna. And you're like, it's going to Delna. And then you were like, it's Aslan Rel. And I was like, I don't know if it's Aslan Rel. And you're like, it's Aslan Rel. Like, you've gotten every step right. And here I am, like, big picturing, like, well, what if they have to bring them back? And like, that's the sacrifice is, going, this, that, and the other. And then like time doesn't exist or whatever on the Force planet. And so like my contributions have been a little bit more nebulous big picture. And so for like the nebulous big picture to kind of be a little bit confirmed is fine. It makes me feel a little bit more insane. I won't lie. Like, I feel a lot more confident, but I also feel highly goofy. Like,
yeah, it feels good, but now it's like also enabling us to put up another whiteboard with red string and thumbtacks and pictures. And so we're like, oh, another one? Thank you. And that's what we're going to do today. So buckle up. Egg Talk is coming later in the episode though. So like Sarah said, we're going to save some more from that article for that section of the episode. But let's start with our overall thoughts on the Eye of Darkness. I want to hear, Sarah, you read the book. You both read the book. You read the audiobook too,
yes.
Which I love that we kind of read it differently each time. What did you think? How'd you walk into the book and then walking out of the book? And like, what was that experience for you?
Right. So you had finished the book before me and you were like, the one thing that you kind of said is like, I enjoyed it, but it also feels like it ends like before it begins a little bit. So I was like, okay, I'm going to walk in with like a little bit of, I guess I don't really have any like specific expectations at this point, even though we have our very specific sort of theory that we're going in with. It's not like binding to how I read the book, if that makes sense. I'm going to go with the flow no matter what the book is taking me. And so I kind of walked in with like a no expectation. Let's go for it. I know that it's going to be a lot of like build up and okay. And I devoured this book, honestly. I read 100 pages one night on the audiobook. And then I was like, okay, I have a couple more nights that I have to read this before I'm like, I have to finish this. And I'll read 100 pages every night and then I'll be set. I read 300 pages or listened to 300 pages worth of the audiobook. So I read it in 2 chunks, 100 pages and 300 pages over 2 nights. That was unexpected. But this book, as we talked with George Mann, the author, on our interview with him, he kind of got the chapter length structure down from thrillers that it just kind of keeps you going. And it totally does. And we're also jumping in enough points of view that you're like, okay, well, I want to get to the next chapter. Let's say we're reading an Avar chapter, but her next chapter is going to be in 3 chapters from now. So I also want to get to her next scene. And so then you just kind of like, you're kind of just tumbling down the hill, gaining momentum.
For me, it was Elzar. I was like, I got to get to the next Elzar chapter. And then I get there and I'm like, okay, maybe the next one too.
Right. No, that was totally 100% it for me. And I will agree, like by the end, like I enjoyed the ending and I felt like I was like really feeling the emotions at the end and like the like, I let out, over like the, oh my God, reunited, but also I'm so mad right now, but also, oh, it's so delicious. All of that at the same time. But I also like wanted more from it. But I know we're going to get Temptation of the Force next, which again, we're back to the waiting game, but I'm a big girl. I'm patient. I've done this before. I can do it again. Our waits are longer in between these books, which is a fascinating kind of change for this phase. But I can't believe I have to wait even more time to get this. But no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good ride. I liked the amount of politics that we got.
Oh yes,
so
for sure.
I was really excited about that. I think there's some good points of view, and also it's just like a really easy read. It's really for me, it was really easy to jump back in without having to go back to phase 1 and like remember where everybody was. I feel like the book does a pretty good job of like jumping in and just letting us go on the journey with them.
Totally. George is a great writer. I'm so happy he's a part of the Star Wars High Republic family and the Star Wars family. I thought he did a really good job of getting into the psyches of the character and like where they are mentally. And I think that's what I love the most about the book was we just left off with these characters in The Fallen Star, which is a much bigger action set piece of a book. It's the fall of Starlight Beacon. And now here we are dealing with the outcome of that a year later and like how are our characters feeling and do they feel like they're not living up to their full potential or their full reputation? And like, what does that mean? And like, what kind of boots are they trying to fill? And how are they trying to lead in these times? Depending on which side of the storm wall they're on. And I think too, it's so interesting when you think of Light of the Jedi kicked off phase 1, and it was this big world building epic that had so many points of views and so many characters. And I think it was a lot of the authors, Charles specifically, and you know, the vision of all the authors trying to figure out what would stick, like which characters would stick. Then phase 2, you had to do that world building again with Zoraida in Convergence and get that on, you know, get that world together. But now phase 3, you don't have to do that same amount of world building that you've had to start with each phase thus far. It's a much more intimate, character driven story with like maybe 5 to 6 critical points of view, and there's still, you know, a large surrounding cast of characters involved, but like you're really digging into those couple points of view. And I think that's what worked the best for me. And George really played to his strengths. And there's some beautiful passages in here about fear, about hope, about trying. And I think there were so many times where I was just like, oh God, I miss these characters. And I'm happy that George made me feel that like coming home feeling. Yeah, I had such a good time with it. And the more I reflect on the book, the more I love it. Because even though it's called The Eye of Darkness, it is a very hopeful book.
Yeah.
It's an extremely hopeful book. And we're going to talk a lot about hope and how that's embodied like through Avar. But I think of specifically the Roth's novelization, and I'm going to save more of this for later, but just this idea that like love can ignite the stars and one lone candle can push back against the darkness. And I started thinking about that sort of thematic structure with fear can bring down the stars in the prologue. And so like with that in mind, it was like, yeah, love can ignite the stars. It just takes, you know, one small act to push back against the darkness. So despite where we are, I feel very hopeful for the future coming out of The Eye of Darkness. And that's a new feeling for a High Republic book to come out of a book feeling hopeful. There were some emotions along the way that were turbulent, but I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good on that one.
Yeah, and we all know that like Tessa Gratton's gonna destroy our souls with Temptation of the Force. Like she's like probably gonna be like, oh, it's too hopeful, and this is a darker middle chapter. Let's crush their feelings. You know, like I feel like that's the job of the middle book.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Kevin Scott. I think about it every day, but yeah, it did feel hopeful. I think this is the first time where I'm like, okay, we can do this, team. Like we got this, team. And I definitely felt that, I think at like the end of Light of the Jedi, or like part of Light of the Jedi, when Avar's bringing the song together and Kevin Tar, and you know, like
Kevin Tar is back. He is back. You can't just say the name Kevin Tar casually. He is back. It is the first time he has appeared in a High Republic book in almost 3 years. I have been waiting. Granted, he did get a name drop in the Eye of the Storm comic back in phase 1, but this is where it matters the most.
Brad is so excited about Kevin Tar. And honestly, me too. Like, you gotta love it when a good old Glup Shadow comes back to just remind you that they exist and do a little something.
And not only that, I have my phase 1 Glup Shadow and my phase 2 Glup Shadow Aslan Rel in a book together.
What a lovely day for you.
And like the degrees of separation are very, very slim, because it is literally just Elzar Man. That is the 1 degree of separation between the two characters of Kevin Tar and Aslan Rel.
That's so nice for you. I'm still waiting for the Kazrath device to come back. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. Wait. Lucasfilm, if you're listening, just throw in the Kazrath device in the Jedi archives or something. Just do it, please. Please.
For me.
Just
please.
Like in the background somewhere. We need it.
I need it so bad.
What if it appears in the Acolyte?
I would actually like combust. I would combust, because like there was the point where we kind of thought it was almost that thing in Ahsoka, and I literally almost combusted. Like I was like, I swear to God, if this is it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of wasn't, but you know.
Who knows? I mean, the egg prophecy from 2019 ended up being a tease. So who knows if the Kazar device is a tease as well, and does belong to a Santeca, or it was
right.
So
right.
again, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that it could also be some sort of tease. So who knows?
Right. Maybe if I'm just loud and annoying enough about it, somebody will drop it somewhere.
That's the thing about Glup Shadows is you can never stop championing the cause. So just keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. Anyway,
speaking of championing a cause,
champion. Oh, okay.
Avzar,
That was a
Avzar,
great
Elzar. Yeah, Avzar, Elzvar. Cranstanberries.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Or Cranstanlan.
Yes. We're back.
Add Stellan in there. R.I.P. Stellan.
We're so back.
But Cran, legendary ship that we live for, breathe for, would go to the ends of the earth for Cran. And we're not quite back, baby, but we are also so back, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't quite get a lot of Cran content because they were on opposite sides of the storm wall until literally the last 10 pages of this book. But like, it's chill. It's cool. It's fine. We're patient.
I'm so happy. We're gonna start with Avar and Elzar here. A bit of a discussion on them because they're our faves, and we love them so much. Yes, and they were finally reunited. And to George's point, when we talked to him, having them gone from each other's lives for so long makes that reunion at the very end of the book so sweet. How did you feel like ending on that note? Like that's the end of the book. That's not just like an end of chapter 43 and it's like, 2 more chapters. That's the end. It's it.
Yeah, I know. I won't lie to you. You're gonna hate me. I did like flipped to the end when I was like 30 pages out. I was like, I need to know how it ends.
How dare you? Well, actually, no, I'll give you credit. Only 30 pages out. If you were saying like before you open the book, I'd be kind of upset. But you know what? I'll give you that.
Right.
I'll give you that.
Well, I just want to read this one sentence for you. Just a single sentence. It's a short one. It's like Jesus wept, but it's it's not biblical. It was a tonic to feel so loved. All around them, other Jedi stopped and stared, their beaming smiles speaking to their joy at seeing Avar returned. It was a tonic to feel so loved. But like, like, I don't have words for like that sentence. It just like feels so weighty.
Yeah.
It feels so weighty. It feels so good. And then of course we see them together, right? And no, I'm reading it now. It's fine. Don't worry about me.
She heard Elzar swallow, but neither turned to look at each other.
Stop.
Her hand hanging by her side brushed gently against his, just for a moment, but it was all they needed. That's like the tropiest trope of tropes. It's like,
no, you don't understand.
Come on.
I love mutual pining. I love yearning. Like
good.
It's so delicious. It's so delicious. But also like just that all the discordance was gone. The notes were perfect in every way. And then she saw him, and then in italics, of course, Elzar. Here he was there too, standing by the window, his back to her. She watched him for a moment. She could see he was trembling. He turned. Their eyes met. She stared at him, unable to look away. She was home. Not there in the Jedi Council, or not there in the council chamber, not there in the Jedi Temple, not even on Coruscant, with Elzar. Thank you, Porter. Thank you for this gift. Let me go.
Oh my gosh.
Let me
Porter
go
Angle.
find my nearest cliff. Like I gotta go. Like this is crazy. This is crazy levels of pining.
Shout out to George for that, by the way.
Shout out to George for that.
Romance in my Star Wars, please, and thank you so much for that. I'm so glad they're leaning into these two characters being romantic, and it's not just like a, you know what, we're both Jedi, we can't do this, and then just like leaving it at that. Like it is it. This is it. This is the end game here. Like Avar Elzar is end game, and it feels good. I just love that they're back together, and like, what does that mean? Because the whole book, Elzar is like, I need Avar. I don't know what I can do without her, and I don't know if Avar, I think Avar is definitely thinking of Elzar, and she obviously cries when she gets his message on the other side of the storm wall, which is like his near I love you moment to Avar Kriss, when he basically says to her, I miss you, I need your help, your guidance, your advice. I'm not sure I can do this alone, not anymore. Stellan's boots are just too big for me, Avar. I'm not as good as he was. I don't even know if I should try to put things right, because what if I mess that up too? For the first time in my life, I can't see the road ahead. I used to be so certain, so sure that I knew what the Force needed from me. Now, all that certainty is gone. I hope you're okay. And even though you won't hear this message, I want you to know that I care and I've tried. And end of sentence. Message sent.
I really hope that you keep in all of my non-word vocalizing in this episode, because words cannot express how I feel about it. It's so
And she weeps. She weeps when she hears that message.
Ultimately, because whereas Stellan is so or not Stellan. Stellan's dead. Rip. Where Elzar is so.
How many times are we gonna do that?
Probably a couple.
It's so sad.
Elzar is so stuck in his emotions. He's so even at his best, he is an emotional person. And that's not me taking a dig, and that's not me giving a value judgment, but he and his emotions are so intertwined. You can't separate them. Whereas I think that Avar in this story, she has built up an emotional wall in order to survive. And when her plan doesn't work as she intends it to, and she helps, the people behind the storm wall, but it's only a one-time sort of thing, and she realizes that it will help them now, but not continue to help them. I think that cracks the emotional wall that she's built for herself in order to survive, because it cracks her own self-perception, which is the only thing that's keeping her going. And like within her survival instinct, yeah. It's I think they're on opposite sides of their emotions. And so then when she gets that message, and when she hears that Elzar cares and has been thinking about her and feels this need for her and in his life, and all that, I think it shatters her emotional wall and allows her to recognize the gravity of her own emotions, both towards him and just towards life beyond the storm wall.
And I love too that things aren't straightforward with these characters. Like, it's not like, hey, it's been a year and we've moved past the loss of Stellan. Because when the Fallen Star ends, I think Avar says to Elzar, our pole star still shines or whatever, and they're looking up at the sky holding each other.
Right.
And this book starts with Elzar's perspective of like, the stars don't look right at all. Like, he's looking up at the sky on Coruscant. He's missing Stellan. The galaxy feels like kinked and twisted and changed, and everything is like very chaotic, and it's, it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under him. And, same for Avar on the other side of things, right? And so they're both feeling like, Elzar's not feeling like he can be Stellan, and then Avar can't be herself, right? And so we're having these like two identity crises of these characters without their pole star. And I think that's just like the nature of grief. It's like when the loss happens initially, it sucks. It hurts so bad. And you come together with those around you. And it's kind of that moment of like, we'll get through this. But it doesn't mean it ever stops hurting. And it doesn't mean it ever goes away truly. And that is the most authentic these characters could have been in the story, is to still have that grief even after a year, and to still feel like their entire lives have been changed for the worse in some ways. And that's what makes the reunion so much better, is because like they truly can't be apart. And it's not that they're, not self-sufficient or they can't act independently, but it's just like they're each other's anchors, is because they've lost one of their wheels, they're riding a tricycle and they've lost the front wheel. So,
but they too, like, have always been as a friendship, like Stellan has been their North Star.
Yes. Yeah.
But they, as two people are absolutely soulmates, like in however you want to paint that, but like there's an element of these two are soulmates. And they've had flings in the past, like there's a sense that like these people are really, they're very intertwined, much more than they would like to personally admit. Light of the Jedi, chapter 23, Naboo.
Oh my gosh, I forget that happened.
You forget that happened.
Thank you for reminding me.
And that is like the specific, there's like a handful of specific chapter numbers I will think about for the rest of my life. It's like Shadowfall chapter 18, Eye of Darkness, chapter 11. Light of the Jedi, chapter 23. You know, like.
You mentioned Elzar's emotional state and that he is an emotional guy. And like you said, it wasn't a dig at him, but I do want to talk about him a little bit and maybe separate from Avar for a minute. And just the fact that he goes through a lot in this book, feeling like he can't do anything right. And we're going to talk a lot about the idea of like what it means to try and like try, give it your best try your best. And for him, he just doesn't have that clarity and nobody understands him. He's trying to like problem solve how to get past the storm wall. He's acting as a liaison between Chancellor and Jedi Council, which is not very unlike Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, right? He's kind of serving that same, he's like a voice almost. He is Stellan. He has to be Stellan. That's what the Jedi and the Republic require of him. And so when he finally feels like he finds a way to get past the storm wall, and he's so confident in this theory that Kevin Tarr came up with that they need to attack a malfunctioning storm seed, and that's the way in, and they do it, and so many lives are lost because of it. And it's the first mission that he's led since returning from Irem, and all the ships are exploding, and he's just like, everything I do ends in suffering. Am I really so blind, so lost? Stellan would never have made that mistake. It should have been me who went down with the beacon, not him. I'm not good enough. I'm sorry, Avar. I'll never be good enough. And so like this is where he's at. It's like almost an imposter syndrome. This mantle of leadership has been thrust upon him, and he doesn't quite know what to do with it. Now, at the same time, while he is an emotional character and he is experiencing a lot of mental anguish, I think he is one of the most resilient characters in the High Republic, because there are points in this where he understands, there is logic and reason to how we need to be acting, and that my opinion is just that. It's an opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. And that was always something that they poked at Stellan about, the idea that Stellan, hey, you made a mistake. We're going to point it out, buddy, because it means you're fallible. But like, sometimes you get things wrong. And he definitely got something wrong after Starlight Beacon by killing Chansey. Like, that was a very bad mistake that he made. And I think he continues to make mistakes. And I'm hoping that he can start to understand that's part of the growth and part of the journey. And maybe Avar being back in the picture and them both feeling like they weren't quite there for each other after Starlight fell in the way that they should have been as friends, quote unquote. Maybe they'll now have
as
a second
friends who have no romantic interest in one another at all. 0%. Have never thought each other romantically.
Definitely. Let's forget about the time that Ty York saw a vision of Jedi under bed sheets.
Right.
So let's forget about that for a moment. But
never
maybe
happened.
Avar being back in the picture, they can get that second chance to make things right and to be there when they maybe wish they would have done a better job of that before.
Right. And I think that he's always someone who's needed other people. He's never been the number one of his group. And so he's looked towards other people all the time, towards Avar and towards Stellan, and Stellan is gone. Avar is gone, not anymore, but was gone for this year. Orla, who
let's not forget Orla.
Stellan paired him up with to go, meditate and work on himself. It's gone. And so many of his I know we've been using the word anchor, but like so many of his people, his anchors, who he can look to when he has a question, who he can consult, who he can be open with, are gone. And his relationship with Lena So is really interesting here, because he is picking up this role. He's picking up roles of both Avar and Stellan in this book, and these aren't roles that he's necessarily suited to. And I think that there's interesting. Elzar and Lena So interesting.
Yeah.
But you can tell that like they can read each other a bit, if nothing else. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because they can't be open with each other by nature of both of their positions. they can't be open with each other in any kind of real way. And I don't even mean that in like an interesting romantic sort of sense, but just in general, because she's the chancellor and she has to be in this one sort of way, and he's a Jedi, and they can both have all the conflict in the world and deal with it and maybe even talk to each other about it, but they can't be open about it. Anyway, Padme Anakin.
Yeah. You know, this is the one and only time we'll probably talk about this, but yeah, there was some interesting tension between these two characters, several points. And I'm like, you know, Avar and Elzar always come first for me. But I was like,
Here's the deal.
Elzar and Lena So are kinda hot. I get it.
Here's the thing, Brad. I am an equal opportunity shipper. I will ship anybody and everybody with anybody and everybody because it's fiction. It's fiction and it's silly nonsense. And so if you see me in the Elzar Lena So tags on AO3, you see me there. Hi. You know, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter. Avar and Elzar is obviously number one in my life, but it's really interesting that these two have come together when they are even more opposites than any other pairing I'd put up. Not even romantically, but just like as people who would interact, you know?
Yeah, but they do have some pretty good conversations. I think that
totally.
Lena is putting a lot of trust in Elzar. So even though Elzar feels like a failure so many times throughout this book, he is doing a lot of heroic acts that he doesn't recognize. You know, whether it's sending those messages through the storm wall that are actually getting to Porter Engle, right? Like Elzar's ingenious nature and his way of thinking about things differently is actually why Avar gets back.
Right.
And you know, she'll probably tell that story about like your messages did get through. I think she might actually tell him that in the book, like your messages did come through or something.
Oh yeah, it's like the last. Hold on, let's read it. I heard you, Elzar, whispered Avar. I heard your messages, and they gave me strength.
There we go. Right. So to my point of Avar being back and Elzar now kind of feeling righted in his own way of like his own confidence. I think him hearing that he gave Avar strength even when they weren't near each other is like probably the one thing he needed to hear most, was like, even though I felt like a failure, I still inspired others. And I think that there's an important lesson there tying to Yoda in Last Jedi saying, you know, the greatest teacher failure can be, because even from our failures, growth can happen. Right. And I do love your mention of Orla. We should never forget Orla Jareni, RIP.
I won't.
But I think for him, her memory lives on very strongly, and there's a moment where he's thinking about giving into hate when he first sees Gara Starros. He's very angry, and then he remembers Orla Jareni and her lessons and how he had kind of gained hope within himself because of her. So super important there. I love and miss Orla very dearly.
Yeah, don't talk to me about the vessel crew. Like it's like all of them. Everyone in that book. Anyway.
But yeah, let's talk about Avar on the flip side though. You want to talk about Avar?
Let's talk about Avar.
And her journey of self-discovery within the occlusion zone.
Right. So like I talked a little bit about how she's like built up this particular wall in order to survive, in order to get through every day. And you have this great bullet point here, which I'm just gonna read word for word. Which is she's going through her Last Jedi arc. the coveted hero of Hetzal, and dealing with her humanness. You know, when we think about people in this world, we can either make them more than human or less than human, and or just human, right? And I think we have a tendency to put up people we see as heroes, or we see as idols or figures that we have to respect and admire as more than people. We fail to recognize that they can do wrong, and then when they do, we either deny it or you find it so shocking that it damns them, right? Even if it's a minimal wrong thing, right? But now this person who's been told that she's the hero of Hetzal, the marshal of Starlight Beacon, has had all of these identities stripped from her and is in a world she doesn't recognize anymore. And what does it mean to just be Avar? And so she goes on this journey that I think is really interesting, where she's like, I hear somebody's call. I'm going to help them. That's my job as a Jedi, is to help. And then once she does, she's told, yes, this will help us in this moment, but it'll only help us in this moment. It's not going to keep us alive forever. And I think that's what's so, I think it's very a real moment. I think for for George as a writer to take for her, and also just a real moment in the sense of like, what does our help mean to another person? You know, like, what is it for me or is it for them? Right? Does that make sense? I know I'm just talking. I know. I'm sorry.
Well, it's going back to the idea of a Jedi being selfless first and foremost, right? Like, is she going to do things that help to build her ego back up? And I say ego lightly because I don't think she carries an ego like very consciously, but it's that legend, right?
We all have ego.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a part of existence.
She felt like it was a mantle that she never deserved. And like throughout all of this, I keep thinking of like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. When I said Last Jedi arc, it's Luke Skywalker going, because I was Luke Skywalker, legend, you know? And I can think of Avar going, because I was the hero of Hetzal, you know? And it's the same, it's ringing the same kind of note there, so to speak.
The disillusionment.
Yeah. And
from that.
She's cutting herself off from the Force the same way that Luke did. You know, that song of the Force is muffled. She can't discern the notes. The song doesn't feel true. It feels like an echo, you know? And I think that moment that you're talking about on Prandril when she realizes it's not enough.
Right.
I think in some ways though, this is the big growth moment for her, and it's to the help of Bellin, who is the Ugnaught with her.
Ugnaught buddy, who is such a great little addition in this book. I really loved him as like a companion to Avar in this story.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was a surprise. It was a delightful surprise. But Bellin tells her, you brought food to starving people, reminded them they aren't alone in the galaxy. It is enough. I have spoken, which I love that, by the way, coming back into the mix here. Right.
I laughed.
She realizes that she is somebody that does try, right? For all of the mistakes that her and Stellan and Elzar have ever made, at the end of the day, they all still tried their best. And so for Bellin in this moment, he is acting as a mirror to Avar to show her, like, I am somebody that tries, and that's all I can do. And to Bellin's point, you can't save everyone, Avar, Kriss, you know? But it's the fact that you try that makes you different from the Nihil. You don't have to win.
It's a mindset thing. You or I personally choosing to recycle or to not recycle is not going to save or kill the planet, right? Like, we are not the people who decide the future of the planet as individuals. Like, the corporations are throwing away so much more trash. Like, they have so much more say or ability to make change. However, that doesn't mean you or I should stop recycling and say, screw it, it doesn't matter. That's sorry to talk about recycling on this podcast, this very serious conversation about trying, but that's it's a perspective point of thing, and that's what Bellin is saying. It's the fact that you even try makes you different from the Nihil. They aren't interested in other people. They aren't interested in humanizing the beings around them. They're not interested in life, right, or in the future. And that's what Avar is interested in. She's interested in people. She's interested in helping. She's interested in selflessness, and every action ignites a little spark. Every action builds over time, and like that's Andor in a nutshell. You know, like all the actions come together, all the people come together in order for something to happen. And even if it doesn't change the galaxy, it changes things for them in that moment. And that matters for those individuals. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this, but these are my thoughts. I have spoken. Bye.
Well, let's talk a little bit about trying in Star Wars, because there is something of significance in the prologue of this book, and it's when Pra Trevider is a prisoner, and he's thinking about the way that he feels the Force as a solid, pliable, moldable thing like clay. That's how he feels it, and he can shape it in new ways. And he remembers a lesson that Yoda taught him back when he was a youngling. There is no trying, only doing, quote, no matter the circumstances, no matter the pain. And that's the first time that we've heard, his iconic, like, do or do not, there is no try line in the High Republic, I believe, phrased a little differently here. But, of note recently in Andor is like the whole idea of one single thing will break the siege. Remember this, try. And it's this idea that in the face of oppression and in the face that, like, when you feel like you are just so dwarfed by the scale of the enemy, all you can do is try. And so for Avar Kriss in this moment, she feels so dwarfed by the, like, size of, oh gosh, I only have one shipment for these people and it's just not enough. It just feels too big for one person to fix. I can't save everybody, right? But you tried, Avar Kriss. That's what matters, right? I think at first glance, you might think Nemec's manifesto of try goes against Yoda's idea of, like, do or do not, there is no try. Now that I think about it, I feel like Yoda is trying, with that phrase, trying to take the pressure off the trying. Because by doing, you are trying. Whether or not it's successful is up for debate. But Yoda's just saying, just do it. Just try. He's not saying don't try it. Just do. Just do. By nature of doing, you try. And so by Avar trying to have these acts of kindness that inspire hope and that bring the light to a dark place, she is doing from trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've always thought of things, Yoda is the key to all of this, in the sense that, like, everything that's ever bad that's happened in the galaxy is because of Yoda, this, that, and the other. Like, do or do not, there is no try. Like, we know that the things that Yoda said to Anakin didn't allow for the level of nuance that Anakin needed in order to work through his feelings, right? Like, he was not able to understand what Yoda was going for when Yoda said, grieve not, right? That whole interaction between them,
let go of what you fear to lose.
Right. Or, feel comfort in the fact that they've gone in the Force. That's not what he needed to hear in that moment. Yes, it's like the outcome of what he needed to hear, but it wasn't what he needed to hear. And I think that, like, that's how I've always felt about, like, do or do not, there is no try. It's like, well, but trying is doing it. But what Yoda is getting at, as I've been, like, recontextualizing his statement in my mind after thinking about all these other instances of trying, the other one that I've been thinking about is, we'll keep taking the chances until the chances are spent, or we win, right? In Rogue One, that's not the quote, but you, listener Brad, you know what I'm saying. But it's a confidence thing. That's what Yoda's trying to say there. And it's also a confidence thing for all of these other points of view. But the context of the confidence is different. When Yoda's saying do or do not, there is no try, it's a personal thing. It's like, you just have to do it, because if you say you're just going to try it, then you're not going to have the confidence to actually complete it. With Nemec and Jyn Erso and Avar, it's an outward feeling of, we have to try against the oppressor. Right? There are three kinds of conflict: man versus self, man versus nature, and man versus man, right? Like, Yoda's is man versus self, and, like, the rest of them are man versus man or man versus nature, like, however you want to contextualize the oppressor in this sense.
Yeah, and I guess to Yoda's point, if his version is man versus self, your only obstacle is yourself. So you can do. Whereas for Nemec, you can't maybe necessarily do because of the scale of the enemy, but you can try. And trying is still the doing, but trying is the thing that you have to do. Does that make sense?
Isn't this fascinating?
But it's, like, a really interesting, it's kind of like we're really, like, picking it apart, like, linguistically, and, like, trying to, like, figure it out. Like what does it mean? Like, what does it mean? Like,
you know what? There's somebody listening to this podcast who's like, these motherfuckers are so dumb. I figured this out 15 years ago.
I came for the egg talk. Where's the goddamn egg talk? Coming up. But anyway, I think Avar, though, like, having this moment of like, oh, I can try. That's enough. That can be enough of a light in a dark place. this is the idea of hope. This is like the seed of hope. And Starlight was the symbol of hope, right? It was a symbol of strength, of unity, of light in the dark, of hope. And then Marchion Ro brought it down, and now it's a symbol that's been turned against the Republic and against the Jedi. It's a symbol of nothing but failure and loss. That feels so defeating, right? To hear that.
Right.
And I think the entire idea in this book is like hope survives. Even without Starlight, hope survives. And I think of something like Rupert Nurtani and Salandra Show, right? The whole idea of the sword and the shield. You should be the shield. And when Salandra Show passes off a short story written by George Mann in Tales of Light and Life, when Salandra passes the shield to Rupert, and Rupert's like, well, don't you need the shield to be the shield? And Salandra's just like, no. I embody those ideas. I know how to be the shield. I don't need the shield to be the shield. It's like Iron Man telling Spider-Man, like, if you need the suit to be a hero, then you're not a hero.
Right,
and I think that's the whole thing here is like, yes, Avar Kriss lost Starlight Beacon. She was the marshal. She went on a bantha chase for Lorna D. It ended up failing. She lost Stellan. She lost Starlight. She lost that symbol of hope. But this is a journey of her realizing she can be the symbol of hope as long as she carries those ideals. And as she carries those ideals through acts of kindness. It's her crate moment in The Last Jedi. It's her
great moment. Yes.
Like Luke doesn't go out onto the battlefield and like take down all the AT-ATs with his laser sword and slicing through their legs. He's like, "Oh, look at me. I'm so cool." You know, it's not about that. It's about him literally just standing there, taking the fire, inspiring everybody inside to be like, he's giving us a chance. That's why he's here. He wants us to survive. He wants hope to survive. So that's Avar. It's fascinating.
Great stuff.
Porter and Bell are two characters. And Burry, yes. I think Bell is more of the POV.
Don't leave Burry out of this.
Yes, I should not leave Burry out of this. I'm thinking of Bell as like the POV character because we don't get Burry's POV. But yes, Porter and Bell and Burry. Which Burry is back. So happy he's alive. Our little baby boy. I love him. But they are two pillars that I think help to keep us grounded throughout the story. Two characters that are on each side of the storm wall. And for them, maintaining hope looks a little different based on their circumstances.
Right. And I think we can probably say it about every single character in this book, saying like, oh, they've lost it all. They've lost everything. And they're still waking up every day and they're continuing on and doing what they need to do. But another one of those characters is really Bell. I think after the death of Loden, which was so traumatic and so awful and so heartbreaking, and like the first time we had seen the Leveler in action in these books, we could have said like, Bell's gonna lose it. Like Bell's gonna not be able to recover from this. And then again, in the fall of Starlight Beacon and the loss of Burryaga in that time, and then him being like, I gotta find Burry, I gotta find Burry, I gotta find Burry, I gotta find Burry. And doing that for months and months before he does find Burry, great. Or maybe a month before he finds Burry. Which he does. Shout out to Bell for his persistence. But that chase could have gone south for him. Right? Like to me, that at that point for him, it felt like I lost Loden and now I have to save somebody. Now it consumes me. But, you know, he finds Burry. Burry's alive. Thank God. You can't kill off Burryaga, sweetest baby boy. Legend, icon, king. We love you. But now they are back together, and what they're doing is they're just helping people and also attempting to get a path drive. And they are towing the line between regular space and the storm wall. And so they're this kind of precarious position, but anchoring themselves for the light. And I think that, you know, like things really, 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 really could have gone wrong for Bell emotionally. And yet he continues on and he perseveres and he has a big heart about it. And he has Burry by his side as an empath too. And they both have big hearts about it. And I think that is really powerful. And I think that these characters are just really good, where we have like a lot of emotional complexity in like Elzar, and I like we can never even find the depths of the emotional complexity in Elzar because he's just a lot all the time. God bless him. I feel like there's such a pure heartedness to Bel and Baryaga that allows them to be their motives to be simple. And I don't mean that derogatorily, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think you're getting at what I was kind of saying in terms of them being simple. It's not that they're simple; it's that they have planted their feet and are sticking to their morals. They're sticking to what they know is right on an instinctual level.
There's a clarity.
Yeah, they are unmoved. They're unfazed, and to call a character like Bel Zettifar unfazed after losing Loden says a lot, because the fact that he is like sticking to for light in life, every life mattered, every death is a failure. What else did for light in life mean if not that? That's his drive. His drive is to save Baryaga, like you said, right? Against the orders of the council, which is like, you need to come back, is probably a lost cause. He's stuck to his instincts. And even though those instincts were at odds with those around him, he saved a life, right? And so that's what's driving him now. It's like, yeah, the path drive is important, but the primary mission is saving lives everywhere I can. And that's what he tells Burry. He says, that's how we're going to defeat the Nihil, Burry, by saving people one at a time if we have to. Every life we protect is another blow well struck. By ensuring their legacy lives on, even if the Nihil take everything from them, we show the Nihil that they can never truly win. And it goes back to the Rosico quote. It's like saving what we love, right? It's not fighting the enemy. It's saving what we love. It's saving people. Every life saved, to Nemec's point, is a small act of insurrection that pushes their lines forward. That's all the Jedi can do. And that's all somebody like Bel can do and Burry can do, is just save as many lives as possible. And it's why Burry is like, do not push into the storm wall. I know it seems like a good idea, but vengeance is not for Jedi. That's not what this is about. It's still about saving lives, and we can't lose ourselves. In those moments where maybe Bel is not as clear as he could be, Burry is there to back him up. Right.
And that was such a pivotal moment for them. When he brought him back from that brink.
Yeah. That was a really powerful moment for sure.
It was like, it was upsetting. It was like, we are so close to this. We are so close to this. But knowing that it would harm them if they went through with it.
Because who's there to save lives if not them?
Right. And their lives also count in this too,
Do you think Bel could become a Wayseeker?
Yeah, I was just the conversation of Wayseekers has been so interesting in the High Republic, because we know that Vernestra has become a Wayseeker. Orla was a Wayseeker. May she rest in peace. And she was so interesting and cool. Vernestra has gone a different path because she didn't agree where the Jedi was at. She felt like she had different things to do. Could Bel become a Wayseeker? No, I don't think so. And I don't think so because of this. And he says, for light in life, that had always been the Jedi's mantra. And no matter what happened, Bel held on to those words as truth. So I guess unless the Jedi stray so far from that he doesn't see himself, or he doesn't see the Jedi in that message anymore. But I think that message for him is bigger than the Jedi's missteps or disagreements with him.
To say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity, right? You can, speaking of symbols of hope, you can champion light in life separate from the Jedi. And I think that's why Bel will become a Wayseeker.
Oh,
because he realizes that his drive to want to save people doesn't have to be tied to him being a Jedi. I feel like Bel is somebody who would see injustice in the galaxy and do everything he could to stop it. When is it going to get to a point where Bel's instincts are so against the Jedi Council's wants and desires for where he needs to be? Are the Jedi going to be like, you need to get that path drive? And he's like, no, I got to save these people. Like that's where the friction's going to happen. And so where is that breaking point for Bell? And maybe he wants to go do other things in the galaxy that are calling to him. That's my thought, at least.
I think that's a valid read. I'll be really curious to see where Bell's story ends up, because it's one of those ones where, you know, he's persevered so strongly throughout this, and I kind of like went through his journey a little bit and how he's persevered, but like he could just decide to not, or he'd align himself in the same way as he has in the past, you know, or go south personally, or any of these things, because yeah, he's just been through a lot.
He has. And I think he'll survive. I think he'll survive to the end too. I don't think Bell is a character that
killing him off would be a particular cruelty that I don't think the authors would go for, but you know.
Yeah.
Load and Great Storm. What can we say?
Who knows? But we also mentioned Porter. Porter is another pillar of hope in this book. I love that he goes on this journey to rebuild this EX droid. And
yes.
I love it when a Star War is all about the fate of a galaxy falling in the hands of a droid. Don't you? Don't you love that? It never gets old. It's like, we got to get these plans to Leia. We got to get these plans to the people on Dakar. And now it's like, X1, you got to get through the storm wall and get this message out, you know?
Right. You got to get this, you got to travel all the way outside to get these plans or get this message out in order to survive. Yeah, no, that's great stuff. I mean, I'm a girl who had a crush on R2D2. I love droids. What can I say? So I don't know. I'm born on the same day as Anthony Daniels. Like, it's droidness and me, we're pals. But yeah, I thought Porter's story is so interesting because in the early books in phase 1, we kind of see him as this, like, he's kind of got this cool aura. He's the Blade of Bardotta. He's really old. He's an absolute badass, and he knows how to make soup. 9-egg stew. You know, like that's what we walk away with after phase 1. And then in phase 2, we get The Blade, which is a comic, right? Which I still haven't read. It's still on my counter. So that's on me for missing that piece. But we get to learn a little bit more about him in an earlier time. We get to kind of get his backstory with General Weiss, learn more about Barash, and a little bit kind of get some context for the Barash vow, and understand why he's the Blade of Bardotta. So he kind of plays this, you know, like phase transitory property here as he's pulling from both phase 1 and phase 2. Which I think is really interesting. And I don't know how hard it hits compared to some of the other characters from phase 1. Like, if you haven't read the comic, which I don't know, I felt a little bit more connected to Bell and Buriaga, but I'd also just spent more time with them as a reader personally. I don't know. Am I saying words? Are they making sentences and points? I'm not sure at this point. We're past the hour 15 mark, guys.
No, that makes sense. I feel like he really shows how important he is to the story. And I do like that we get a lot more time with him because I don't think we got a lot of his point of view in Light of the Jedi, but the Blade really illuminated his relationship with Barash and how important she was to him, and how he feels pretty slighted by Weiss for being the reason she left the Jedi Order. And I think him having that knowledge of those like proprietary systems that belonged to the EX droids in the days of the Pathfinder teams, and like knowing how to use those technologies so that, you know, Avar could make that hyperspace jump at the very end, right? Like, I think he did such an essential job for the story.
100%.
And being the person that could get the hope out, because the whole time he's being driven by hope. He is like, hope was what made them different from the Nihil. Hope was what made him a Jedi. Hope was the only path left, because to succumb to despair was to let the Nihil win. Like, these are things that are driving him. That's exactly what you needed on the other side of the storm wall, because Avar is without her hope. She's still trying to find it, but Porter is like, I have the hope no matter what. It's funny because like his whole thing is like, he's hearing the beeps and boops of Elzar's messages, and he describes it as a song of comradeship. To Porter, it felt like hope. Whereas like Avar doesn't feel as
everything is hope.
Avar doesn't feel a song. The song is muffled. So Porter's feeling the song, and it's a different song. You know, it's not the song of the Force. It's the song of people being unified. It's people feeling strong together.
Is that not also the song of the Force? Kind of.
It is, but it's not. It's not a song that he's feeling through the Force. Is what I'm saying.
Right,
you know, it's a different kind of song, but it's still invoking those same feelings of hope and of like there is a way to do this. And I just thought that was great. I thought that was great. And I think Porter, I don't know if he's dead.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about this, because I was like, why would we kill off Porter? And then you were like, is there a body? And it was like, well, I guess not.
You're gonna tell me you thought Buryaga wasn't dead, and now you're gonna think Porter's dead? We didn't see a body for Burry, and he was he's well alive.
Old. Okay, you can't kill off this baby empath Wookiee. That would be like, you can't do that. You can't. We're cruel, but we're not that cruel 99% of the time at George Lucas when Anakin kills the younglings. But like, we're not that cruel in the Star Wars most of the time. But the whole kind of story that like Porter has, his whole like emotional arc at the end was like, you know, we are what they grow beyond, pass on what you have learned, kind of a vibe. And he's like, I'm old. I've done a bunch of shit in my life. Like I've lived and I've lived and I've lived and I've lived. And I don't know what my mission is except for this. And it's a sort of resignation from him, and not in a sense of defeat, but just in a sense of what his path, his next step is. So if he's dead, I wouldn't be surprised. Because his whole vibe was like, pass on what you have learned. We are what they grow beyond. Avar, this is for you, girly pop, and not for me anymore because I'm an old fart. Like that. Like that's kind
he's got so much more 9-egg stew to make. He's got to participate. In the next galactic bake-off. Like, how can he miss that?
You know who better else be there? Buckets of Blood. Okay,
Buckets of Blood is dead.
Don't. Did you see a body, Brad? Don't come after me.
That was reverse psychology. Look at you clowning on yourself right now. Look at you. I caught you in full 4K. Full 4K.
That's fine. I don't care. You can catch me in 4K. You can catch me in 4K every time. I do not care. I will take the losing bet every time. It does not hurt my ego.
All right.
I recognize I don't mind being wrong. It's chill. It's cool. Prove me wrong. I'll be delighted to be wrong. Porter, come back. But I think he's dead right now.
Fair enough.
There's another piece of this, right? And this is why I say, like, it's for you, girly pop. I'm an old fart. Like, this is the quote that I'm meaning here. Which, you know, as I paraphrase it, I take out some of the nuance. This was always meant for you, Avar. This mission. You're the future of the Jedi Order. I'm the past. You need to get out. Go beyond the storm wall. Elzar and the others need you. Elzar. Anyway, that's the end of the sentence. I was editorializing. You're the future. I'm the past.
Oh.
The past and the future must split and combine?
Huh. Interesting. A little egg talk nugget here, huh?
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. We've been you and I have been going back and forth. What does it mean that the past and the future must split and combine? We're like, we don't know. It's kind of the missing link. We don't know. There's that one comic where like Luke talks to Elzar Mann, but that's like an outlier. Okay. Luke Skywalker, Elzar Mann, that's like an outlier. I don't think that this connects all the way to Luke Skywalker necessarily, right? It does, but it doesn't. You're the future of the Jedi Order. I'm the past. They have to split physically and combine. Now, do I still think that this has to do with time somehow? Yes. But does that feel a little egg talky? Past and the future must split and combine? Yes. That's all I have to say.
No, I think you're onto something, because it's not like we're saying like, oh, that prophecy is about Porter Engle and Avar Kriss in this moment. You know, that's not what we're saying. But I think it speaks to past generations and future generations, and how can those two work together to achieve an outcome. In this moment, you have two generations of Jedi achieving an outcome of hope. and they have to split to get that done. They have to. Porter's got to pass on what he's learned.
Right. We are what you grow beyond.
Hope and a gift that he gives to Avar is like something that she's going to carry with her to the next person, right? So it kind of his generosity and his selflessness splits from Porter and combines with Avar, you know? So it's just this like idea of like the generational learning. It's the generational passing of the torch. And that's what this is in this moment. It's like, I'm giving this to you so that you can give it to somebody else.
Right. And I don't think this is like the only past and future split and combining that's happening here, because we also have that little very interesting little nugget, just a tiny little piece of information that like Mari Santeca gave Ernesto Rowe the paths. They were also of different generations. The past and the future must split and combine. Where can they combine with these paths? Oh, Planet X, the Force Nexus planet. So I think there's like a generational component to this and like a time and physical component to this. Does time exist on Planet X? Does time move in the same way? Is maybe the reason why the Nameless are so agitated in regular space is because they've been removed not just from their home, but from their concept of time in existence.
You know, they are aging quite quickly, and like some of the concept art,
they
look a lot like somebody put them side by side on Twitter today. The first one was like very blue leveler, it's like very lively, and the second one is just the malnourished white leveler that's very shriveled and bony, and maybe you're onto something. It's like dog years, you know? It's like, you know, 1 year for a leveler is like 20 years on Planet X, you know? I don't know.
Right. Well, I just don't think that time function. They're like, so there's this episode of Star Trek Discovery, where Burnham and Spock go to this planet, and this planet was featured in an episode of Star Trek, the original series in the 60s. And so this woman greets them and she looks like she's walked out of the 60s. And it's because like she is the same character in the 60s version of the show, which the characters are going to at a completely different point in time. Like the way that time works on that planet is not the same as it works. And like it shows you a particular thing because the time moves in a particular way. And because it wants to appear a certain way to you, the visitor. So I just think that like Planet X is not normal is the point I'm going for.
Definitely not normal.
Definitely not normal.
Has a bunch of eggs, you know, it has
a bunch of eggs, but also it's super hard to get into, super hard to get out of like the atmosphere of Planet X. Like it's not a place that's like, welcome visitors, please, you know, stop by our information desk and get the brochure so you can go on the guided tour of Planet X. Like that's not the vibe.
Yeah. This part of the prophecy keeps eluding us. And I think we'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But that was an interesting word choice that we had both kind of perked our ears up about. And we're like, oh, interesting, you know? So something to keep an eye on as we move farther into phase 3.
Definitely.
I want to go back to fear can bring down the stars. And the direct line you can draw to love can ignite the stars from the Rots novelization. I started thinking about this with Marchion Ro and the way that he pitches the annexing of the galaxy into the occlusion zone, and the way that he takes planets and they become civilians of Nihil space, and it's like, you are free. It's like, what does really freedom mean like in that scenario? And I think to him, he thinks that the freedom he's giving them is a gift. And the epilogue of the Roth's novelization kind of goes as follows. So it's talking about how darkness, or the dark is generous, basically, right? Like the dark is Marchion Ro. He's generous according to himself, right? The first gift is concealment. The dark protects us from what we dare not know. Thinking about like the occlusion zone. People within it don't know what's happening from the outside. People from the outside don't know what's happening on the inside. Likewise, We don't know a lot about the Leveler and the Nameless and the Jedi. That's concealed from them as well, right? That's a gift to the Jedi, so to speak. That concealment. Second gift is comforting illusion, but the greatest of its comforts is the illusion that the dark is temporary, that every night brings a new day because it's the day that is temporary. Day is the illusion. And so thinking about the day as the illusion, it's like, hey, you pay your tithes to the Nihil. We let you live to see another day. That's an illusion.
Well, I also think like day as an illusion is like the structure of your republic is not built on rock. It is built on sand, and it can crumble. And like that's what Marchion showed them with the hyperspace disaster, in Light of the Jedi, is like your republic is a facade. It's like when you're driving, right? The lines on the roads are just paint. We all just choose to follow the painted lines. We don't have to follow the painted lines. And it only takes one little bump of the car for you to go out of the painted lines. That's how fragile the Republic is. And I will expose that at every turn because the real reality is self-interest and anarchy and individualism and thinking of yourself, and not even thinking of yourself before you think of any others, but thinking of yourself at all, like only, and not thinking of any others. That's the reality here.
And that's what Gira tells Marchion. She says, what happens when that storm blows itself out?
Right. And she's saying, you can do that, but, at the end of the day, people will revert to the painted lines on the road because it's comfortable, and it might not always be their favorite thing, but people wake up every day knowing what to expect. And that understanding of the world is more important to people in a general sense than their own self-interest, or it overrides their own self-interest.
We got a lot to talk about Marchion's self-interest and what he wants for himself.
Yeah.
And we're about to get to that very shortly. The third gift of the darkness, though, this is my favorite, is the light itself. As days are defined by the nights that divide them, as stars are defined by the infinite black through which they wheel, the dark embraces the light and brings it forth from the center of its own self. So that last gift is light. So the dark is generous, right? And I think of light coming forth from the center of its own self, from its own self, of the darkness. And I think of the imagery of Avar Kriss coming out of hyperspace from the storm wall, emerging from the darkness, and she is a ray of hope. She is the light. She is the hope. She is being brought forth from that occlusion zone.
Mm.
So not only is the dark generous and giving these gifts of concealment and illusion, but is unintentionally giving the light itself back to the Republic to have hope. And that is like the flaw in Marchion's plan. And that's why this book is so hopeful to me, because all it took is one single Jedi to get through the storm wall. That is all that was needed. It doesn't matter that Marchion is shutting down those old ancient hyperspace lanes that prospectors use, because he knows how she got through, right? The EX droid. So he's like, we're going to shut those down. So that's out of the question now, right? But it doesn't matter that they can't use that EX droid pathway anymore, because it just needed to have one jump, and it's the one jump that mattered the most, right? And so that's the thing. The dark is generous and it's patient and it always wins, but in the heart of its strength lies its weakness. One lone candle is enough to hold it back. Love is more than a candle. Love can ignite the stars. It's speaking to the fragility of Marchion Ro's rule, right? To Nemec's point, tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Going back to the idea of fear in this book, right? And that even the smallest act of insurrection can happen and push the lines forward, right? And that is it, right? Avar is that lone candle. And I think that's what's so cool, and why that epilogue in the Revenge of the Sith novelization we just keep coming back to it because it just speaks to what hope is. It's like, no matter how dark it gets, you have that one candle and that love of like saving life and the love of the Force for light and life. That's the driving thing that maintains the hope.
Right. I'm so glad that like we have all this, all these quotes and all these things to connect to and from the Rots novelization, because, you know, in the Disney era, everything has gone back to hope. You know, what do we have? Hope. You know, what do? We keep trying till the chances are spent. Nemec's Manifesto, everything we've talked about so far. It's been so clear. And yes, I fully understand that the first movie is called A New Hope. I get it. It's not like this is news to anybody. I understand that. Don't be like, Sarah, since 1977, I get it. Okay. But like, you know, like I think that like the quotes themselves, the things that we can pull from, Hera's quote, they're all so clear, but also give us different shades of experience within the galaxy, which I think is great.
Yeah. Star Wars is just so cool, ain't it? Ain't it just so neat?
Brad, isn't Star Wars cool and fun? Don't you love it?
I love it.
I'm really glad to be here.
I love Star Wars. I love the Rots novel. I love the High Republic. But you know what I love even more than all those things? Or equally?
What is that?
Star Wars politics.
Wow. That was such a brilliant transition. I didn't even know you were going to go there. Yes, I did. I knew that was the answer to your question.
Something we missed so dearly from The Fallen Star. We missed it.
Yeah. I mean, that was the one thing I think that I fully understand like why The Fallen Star turned out the way it did. And I know that there are some people who like Fallen Star's fave. But for us, like, I don't think it hit as much because it was missing the scope that it had in the first two books. And we definitely got the political lens back into this book, which I was really excited about personally, because I was like, yeah, politics, let's go, baby. And the politics are pretty clear in this book. Marchion has excluded himself from everybody else. He's taken things. He's a hostile actor. And he has no interest in it. Gira says, Marchion, don't be a loser. You have to understand that we have to play the game in order to win the game. And he's like, I don't acknowledge that there's a game. I'm already winning, kind of a vibe, you know?
Yeah.
I don't acknowledge the
Well
game
said.
at all.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. The board is right in front of you. We have to put our players on the board in order to play the game. And he's like, la. Stop talking. If you want to play the game, but I'm not interested. And she's like, fine, fuck it. I'll go play the game. And she has created this new structure to the Nihil in an attempt to play the game, which is really interesting because it's kind of like bringing in a different set of players. Where is Lorna D? What's up, girly pop? Like, where are you? But I'm trying to find this on Doc. I know we have it. Okay, here it is. So she, instead of there being the very kind of complicated structure of like the eye, the storm, the tempest, the runner, like, you know, the clouds, the strikes.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well for the Nihil. Lorna D still on the run.
Lorna D, everybody else, Pan Eta, you know,
Pan Eta, oh my god, throwback.
Wet Bub, just
I
forgot
forgot about Wet Bub, the Gungan.
How did you forget about Wet Bub?
It's been a while. You know, Eggtalk has just been dominating so much real estate in my head. I'm forgetting all the small bits.
How could you forget about Wet Bub?
You're right. That one's on me. That I'm a clown. It's me.
Right. Thank you. I'm glad you would. Thank you.
Finally admitted it. Jeez.
Yeah. So Gira has created a political structure of sorts. So she has nominated herself the Minister of Information. General Weiss is the Minister of Protection. And Baron Bulin, what a name. What a guy. He sucks. The Minister of Advancement, which is a very, very flowery way to say torture master.
Yeah. Frankenstein, yeah. Mr. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like clearly this very contentious sort of power situation happening between the two of them. Yes, they are sleeping together. Are they happy about it? Necessarily no. These days. And they're at odds of what the goal is. And so for Gira to go to the new Republic, what era are we in, Sarah? They're all the Republic.
She time traveled.
Right. The past and the future must blink combined.
Oh my God, that's it.
But she goes to Lena So and she's like, hey, girly, you know me. We're old pals. Let us in. Things are going well. We want to play the game. And she's like, and Lena's like, I don't think you actually want to play the game. Maybe you do, but I'm not sure.
I think you realize your back is against the wall because other people don't want to play the game, and now you really need to up your own. You need to play the game of two people in order to make sure that your power moves that you made remain the status quo or elevate you further. This is really a self-interest play for her.
Right. And it always has been, you know, she's like, I'm going to align myself with the winning side. And then she realizes that they're not winning. And she's like, oh, shoot, let's see if I can fix that. And the reality is she's a one-woman show in terms of action. Yes, there are apparently Nihil as one kind of catches her aside and is like, hey, you know, there's some of us agree with you. But she's ultimately a one-woman show in the decision making and in the government. I don't necessarily think General Weiss is particularly interested in her agenda. I certainly don't think Bulin is interested in her agenda. You know, they're doing their own things. Bulin's is certainly more aligned with Marchion, and I would say that Weiss is aligned with herself. Yeah.
I gotta say, I love that they all have distinct traits and personalities, because I feel like I got lost a little bit with all of the different Tempest runners. But I really feel like I have a good read on the three ministers. Like, I know Weiss. We have background with her from phase 2. I know Bulin because we know Bulin is one of the Ithorian. He was the Ithorian kid in the caves in Path of Vengeance that was putting out the bombs. That was him. So he was a former Path of the Open Hand child, Littles. And then Gira Staros, who like. So I do like that kind of new structure. By the way, I just want to like point that out because I think it makes the stakes feel higher. It's fun to care a little bit more about the enemy.
Yeah, everybody's slightly less expendable now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but
totally.
only slightly because Marchion does not give a single shit.
We're talking a lot about the game, and I do want to like point out, I think Marchion does play a game. It's not necessarily like the game. It's not like the Game of Thrones, you know? He's not like going for the throne in like King's Landing. But he's playing a different game. And for him, he says, to win at this sort of game, you must become your enemy. But in becoming your enemy, you lose after all.
Like, girl, what? Girl, you've already lost if that's the way you're thinking.
That is interesting because I think there's two sides to that. Is like the first is like in becoming your enemy, you lose after all. So in his eyes, if they become a legitimate body in the Republic, if they become part of the Senate, if they become a political figure, they lose because that's what they're up. That's what they've always been up against. They want to fight back against the rules of the Republic, the rules that he thinks are constrictive to the people of the galaxy. And then the other side of that, he's hoping that the Jedi and the Republic become their enemy because he knows if the Jedi and the Republic become like him and they go as low as he does, they lose because they then lose sight of themselves and what they stand for, right? What happens when a Jedi gives into fear? Anger, hate, suffering, right? That's what Marchion Ro wants. He wants the Jedi to give into those things and not represent the hope that they should. And that's why Porter is like, hope is the only thing that does separate us from the Nihil. And there's one point in this when before they're attacking the storm wall, Elzar tells Kevin Tarr, he says, sometimes to defeat your enemy, you have to think like your enemy. And then Tarr says, that's a dangerous game. What separates us from the Nihil then? And Elzar says, our motives. And Tar says that they would argue the same and don't see themselves as the villain. It's a little bit of an on the nose conversation, but it just kind of, you mentioned the game, and I was thinking of some of those conversations of like, become your enemy, don't become your enemy. That's the game, right? And
you either die here or you live long enough to
see yourself become the villain. Oh, you know, like it's so rich. It's right there. It's right there. And I had to point it out because it's just like really interesting how those like two things were kind of connected in the book. Thinking along the lines of Marchion not wanting to become the Republic, become part of a governing body. Again, he's somebody that does not, like you said, does not want to play by any game whatsoever. And I think we see that in this book with 2 acts of violence because they are violent. Really want to know what Comac Vetus is thinking right now.
Caught that.
There are 2 monumental things that happen in this book. It's not chapter 18, but it's chapter 11. You know, close enough. We're in the teens. Well, actually not technically teens, but we're close.
We're in the tweens.
Yeah, tweens. We were in the tween chapters. Again, chapter 18, conspiracy theory. If you've been along with us for a while, you might know what we're talking about. Chapter 18 in books always slap, but chapter 11 in this one slapped, but not in a positive way.
Yeah, it was like an ouch slap as opposed to like a wow slap. You know, you know
like
the difference.
I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark. Chapter moment. You know,
right.
We have a terrifying moment. So on the anniversary of Starlight Beacon, Marchion Ro is showing the galaxy he does not care about your rules. He does not care about your game. He does not care about the Republic. He is going to execute Jedi Master Patre Viter live. And it's not great. It's not going too hot. What was your reaction to this chapter?
It wasn't good. It was like, why would you do this to me? Like shock and awe. Why would you do this to me? And I think it was the moment where I was like, oh, we did not come to play in this book. We did not come to play because it is particularly cruel and awful and evil in a way that I don't think we've quite seen from him. And of course, we have seen evil and awful and very bad actions from Marchion throughout his time as a big bad. But this one, there's something about the cruelty of the anniversary, like the cruelty of forcing people to witness this, the cruelty of like, of course, like Patre Viter's position as like a Grandmaster Jedi, and broadcasting him in such a way to make him look pathetic and weak. I don't like it.
It was tough reading. It was very tough to read because we're getting a lot of it. We're getting a lot of it through real Dairo's perspective.
Right.
And she's terrified of it. And we see Patre Viter struggling. You know, Marchion puts out the lightsaber of Loden Greystorm and says, go for it, see what you can do. And it's just too overwhelming for a Jedi Master to overcome. And I think that was one of the cruelest aspects of it. It was like a here, play with your food for a little bit, leveler, you know, see what this Jedi can do. And like he knew the Jedi was going to lose in that situation, but it made it that much more heart-wrenching. And what I find fascinating about Marchion Ro is throughout phase 1, he was somebody who kept his identity somewhat secret. And the Republic never truly knew who the Eye of the Storm was. They always thought it was Lorna D. And, you know, it was kind of this elusive figure in the center of the storm that nobody could see. And now he is front and center in front of the cameras, showing the galaxy this is who he is. He says, you are all the Republic, but we are the Nihil. Underestimate us at your peril. Like he's taking ownership of this. He is stepping into the limelight, and he no longer wants to be the man behind the curtain. He wants to be the guy at the front that says, this is me. This is who I am. This is who I want. And this is how I'm going to get it. And I'm going to execute a Jedi Master right in front of your eyes. And it's also the first time the galaxy is seeing the leveler for what it is on camera. It's the Jedi's first best look at it, to understand what it looks like, and maybe a little bit more about what it wants.
Well, there's this moment where, I think we understand what Martian's goal is, and it's this idea of legacy. Um and so Gira goes, so we are all forgotten in time. And he goes, unless we find a way to be remembered, to leave an indelible impression. Is that your aim? Said Gira. The true point of the Nile, to elevate you, Martian Ro, to make you into a god. And Ro smiled. What else is there? You and the follow up to that is, I just want to like hit the point. What else is there? For him, anarchy, godlike status is what he wants. But then we get this kind of funny moment. You sound unhinged and you sound boring, and no one wants to be bored. So phew. That's funny. But yeah, it's this idea that the only game he plays is a single player game, and everyone else is the pawns, and he's the only one with the ability to move them. There are no special characters, there are no other players, there's, it's just him making the rules and playing the game. And it's pretty scary because with that you can't anticipate the next move, because the rules are always shifting, and you can't respond because you're playing different games. And I think that's what continues to be confusing about Martian to the Republic, is his complete lack of order. The Republic being a place where there is some structure and everybody abides by a certain structure. Even if they're different structures, everybody wants structure in some way or another, and he's just not interested in structure.
Yeah, and that's what Gira thinks to herself too. She says, here is a man who doesn't know what he wants, and that's more dangerous than any tyrant, any revolutionary, any warlord, because no one can predict what he is going to do next, and here I am trapped with him, caught in the storm. And so she's recognizing that she's like a rock in a hard place.
Right, but this was also something of her own doing, 100%. She actively made a choice to go with him because he was, the winning side. The Republic isn't going to win this. He's the winning side, so I want to go with him. And now she's like, well, not so sure if I'm winning anymore. Problem.
Right. And to your point about the point of Martian's aim is to become a god, I found that conversation so fascinating, and you're talking about legacy, and I have to think back to A Closed Fist Has No Claws, which is Marta Rowe's second person point of view story written by Tessa Gratton in Tales of Light and Life. And our whole thinking while we were reading that was, who is reading this? Who is she writing this to? Who is she writing this message to, or this transcript to? Is it somebody in the future in her bloodline? And we imagined it was Martian. And her whole point and her perspective there was, a name is only as much as you make it, right? Like when the Evereni die, we're not remembered by our bodies, remembered by the name and what we did. And I think that's really what's driving. Maybe Martian read that and is like, I have to be remembered. I don't want other people taking credit for what I'm doing and what I'm orchestrating. This is going to be my legacy and my legacy alone. I think that's also why we learn in recent weeks he's been hearing Marta Rowe's voice talking to him, because up until now we've only ever heard Asgard Rowe talking, the voices of the dead as the Evereni hear them. And I think it's because he's becoming more like Marta. His motivations are aligning closer with Marta's. With Asgard, it was just be the eye of the storm and rule the Nile. That was Asgard's thing. You keep power as long as you can keep it. But Marta Rowe's aim and her motivations were about freedom. And as she puts it in Tales of Life and Light, every gift is a trade, a relationship. Every gift comes with expectations, whether they are sharp as a blade or pure as love. And if there is no gift freely given, then what is freedom? Taking. And here Martian is saying to the galaxy, these people are free. Nile space is a testament to that freedom, a protected realm where people are at liberty to be who they want, to live free from the interference of politicians. So what is Martian's Rowe version of freedom now? It's taking. He is taking from these planets. He's taking tithes. He's taking their freedoms and their ability to live free of Nile rule. He's oppressing them. So he's becoming more like Marta Rowe. And that's why he's hearing her voice.
The inclusion of her in this is so fascinating. Of course, we found her character so fascinating and compelling in phase 2. So to see the effects of phase 2 in this way in phase 3 with Martian, it feels full circle in a way that I think is really satisfying. And we don't know how Marta's end occurs, but we recognize that, she's gone and her life is over and she took a really dark path. And there's one line in Tales of Light and Life, Close Has No Claws, where she says, like, I'm gonna paraphrase it poorly. I took this from someone and someday somebody will take it from you. Right. So the closer she gets, or the closer Martian gets to Marta's path, I think the closer we get to Martian's demise.
You're waxing poetic here. Beautiful. Who is going to take that from Martian? Who is going to take it? I'm leaning towards Gerastaros. She offers the point of what happens when the storm blows out. And now you have people within the Nihil who are coming up to her and saying, Vis has taken too many losses. We recognize it. People are listening. And that's all you need to know. And that's all Gira needs to hear. Because there can be a different way of doing things, and Martian's power is waning. The Nihil are infighting because they have nobody else to fight. They're in the occlusion zone. They're on the top of the hill, king of the hill. They're bored.
King of the hill.
King of the hill. Triple kill.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think that's why I think, like, ultimately in phase 3, Martian's not going to be the villain by the end. I feel like we're going to lose him much sooner at some point. And I don't know if he'll die or if he'll just be, like, imprisoned and kind of be that. I think of The Walking Dead when Negan and Rick, they have a lot of conversations and Negan's just in prison and him and Rick are talking through the bars. Like, I feel like that could be a Martian Gira situation where she usurps him and he's in the prison and they're having all these, like, ideological conversations about, like, what power is and who wields it and what to do with it. And that could be really interesting. I would love to see it go that route.
I mean, I think we have a lot of players, individual powerful players against Martian right now. So I don't think his role will be eliminated by the end of it, but, like, I don't think he'll be, like, Snoked,
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Like, but I think that it's possible that one or a number of people who have a personal vendetta against him end up allying their point of view in taking down Martian Row with, the Republic and ultimately aiding the Republic's cause. I think it would be really interesting to see Gira or Lorna D return, or Aslan, or any of these sorts of players who have popped up in the past taking him down instead of it being the Republic or a Jedi specifically. Because, I mean, it creates, like, a secondary potential villain character or antagonist character for the Republic and the Jedi, but also somebody who is on their side in some ways, which is that sort of stuff is complicating for the Jedi. Like, I don't think they quite can always handle that. Like, players like Ty Yorick are confusing to them. Players like Aslan are even more confusing to them because Aslan is specifically aligned with, dark side energy. But I think the potential for that is really fascinating.
Martian loses in this book, I think. I think he ultimately suffers, like, one of his biggest losses yet, which is letting one Jedi out of the occlusion zone under his watch.
Right.
It's one lone candle is enough to push back against the dark, right?
Right. And it's Avar Kriss, baby. Like yeah. She's not some rando, level 2 Jedi. She's level 100. Like, she's Avar Kriss.
It's even a little bit more terrifying, though, because now they're more angry. They're chanting "kill the Jedi" at the end of this book, and Martian says, "I want to stomp on the ashes of her dead husk. Hers will be the trial to end all trials, the execution of the so-called hero of Hetzal, the Republic's great hope. We shall see how hopeful they remain after that." And I have to point out, hers will be the trial to end all trials. And Trials of the Jedi is phase 3's name, right? And so we think about,
Brad, no words are wasted in the High Republic.
No words are wasted, exactly. And that's why we had kind of thought about in our phase 3 preview is like maybe Trials of the Jedi means a judicial trial of sorts. It is the galaxy looking at the Jedi, their right to exist, as Charles Soule had said in New York Comic Con, what they mean to the galaxy, what their role is, and what they represent. And can they uphold that? And if Marchion snuffs out that candle, that indicates what he thinks the Jedi's role in the galaxy is, and maybe that thinking spreads to other people as well. Because if other people lose hope in the Jedi and they say, well, a Jedi couldn't even stop Marchion, they can't inspire hope in others, we've lost. So I do think he has a point though. If they get Avar, that's gonna be bad. You think Avar's safe? She's got to be, right?
I feel like she is safe from Marchion, but not safe from a sad ending. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I feel like if she goes down, it's not going to be Marchion Ro's accomplishment, if you will. Like it will be, I think, a personal sacrifice as opposed to a battle.
We will see. Time will tell. I'm very worried too what will happen to Elzar if he loses.
Maybe we stop time and we just don't know what happens at the end. I guess the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, I'm like, maybe I don't want to know. Like maybe living in this before, like I never ended season 3 of Hannibal. It was one of my favorite shows. I actually know what happens in season 3 of Hannibal, but I was so sad that it got canceled that I never finished it. So I was like, I can just live in my headcanon of where these characters go.
I think before we move on to our last section here, I do want to point out Lina So just for another minute, because I think she showed a lot of courage in this book, faced with a very impossible situation of trying to get the Jedi to act and do something and not just sit tight and make it seem like the Republic is allowing violence to be a justifiable path to, diplomacy and democracy. And it's like, hey, if we just let this happen, if we let an execution of a Jedi Master just happen, we don't do anything about it, we're basically saying that's okay to do. And that leads to more violence, right? And I think her turning down Gira's offer was a huge show of strength to say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. The Nihil are unapologetic murderers. We're not talking about a repressed minority here, right? And so Gira's coming into the situation to say, like, things are going good on the other side of the occlusion zone, but we want some representation in the Senate. And Lina's like, absolutely not. You are oppressors. That's what the Nihil are, and not giving them legitimacy, not giving them the time of day. What did you think of her making that decision? Also with the help of Elzar, Elzar saying kind of the similar thing.
Right. I think that her allegiance and her kind of consultation with Elzar is really interesting in the Jedi Council. I mean, because as we talked about earlier in this episode, like Elzar's not the natural choice for this, for sure. So having him there as like a different point of view, I think is compelling. I really agree with like the path that Lina ends up taking, which is like, no, we are not going to legitimize them. We have to put our foot down. If we accept this, like what else are we inviting into the Republic? So I feel that she made a strong choice. And, I think that like over time, there was a point in time where like a lot of discourse was happening really early on about like Lina so bad, like Lina's so capital B bad actor here. And I think that, despite her shortcomings and despite the shortcomings of the Republic as an entity and the way that they're structured and their goals as a government, I think like all governmental systems are not great, like, problems in every one of them. I think she does her genuine best for the galaxy. And I think that that's something like the choices she makes here reflects that. Because if she didn't really care, or if she didn't really care about the Republic as it is, if she didn't really care about, the people on the worlds that have been taken, I think she could have legitimized them and brought them in. But then you're just legitimizing the oppression of the occlusion zone. And like, I think that leads to more negative outcomes for citizens across the galaxy. Yeah, I don't know. That's my thought.
And I think the key to some of that too is, what does "we are all the Republic" actually mean now that the galaxy is so segmented, right?
Right.
And I think we weren't necessarily like super critical about Lena So in phase 1, but I think you and I had some questions about, what does "we are all the Republic" mean? Is it sort of this like colonizer attitude of like, we're going to impose like the Republic's will on planets, and we're going to like bring them in and like, kind of erase some of their culture? And like, thinking back on it now, I don't know if it's necessarily as much of that, because I think we're actually seeing that sort of like colonizer oppression rule through Marchion. Like, Marchion's representing what it looks like if "we are all the Republic" is actually a super negative thing, a super terrible thing for the galaxy, right? Because he's like, "we are all the Nihil." Like, that's the flip side of that coin. But Lena So's speech to the Senate, when she's talking about "we are all the Republic," she's like, yeah, our enemies use this as a point of ridicule. But this is because like what "we are all the Republic" actually means is like unity. That we share common values. We share compassion for fellow beings. We desire to raise one another up, to help where needed, and to do it together. And that we carry the Republic in our hearts. We share values, and we want to see the galaxy return to a state of peace. So I found that really interesting when she's talking about that, because she's pointing out that "we are all the Republic" is not to make every planet look the same. It's not to make every planet have this exact same culture. It's just recognizing that we all want to be a part of something, and that we have the same values, like of respecting and wanting to protect a life. And that's ultimately like what that means. And maybe that's like a shift in attitude for her. Because I think ultimately she does want the right thing for people in the Republic.
Right. I don't think it's a shift in attitude very much, but I do think that like when you juxtapose her actions against Marchion and the Nihil, it reframes it, right? Like, I don't think that the like colonialist criticisms of Lena and the Republic in phase 1 were invalid or like in poor faith. Like, I think that those criticisms were generally thoughtful and like made points about, her tactics, like putting a bunch of outposts on a bunch of worlds throughout the Republic and beyond, even if they weren't part of the Republic. Like that's somebody who's not part of your community coming into your community and asserting even, a nominal like amount of authority, right? Like that's that can be not the friendliest sort of interaction. But, like when you juxtapose what she's doing and her message behind "we are all the Republic," which it's great, I think, to hear more of that, because "we are all the Republic" is pretty easy to create different meanings off of, or distill down into like one big idea when it's a little bit more nuanced than that single thought. But when you put that against the occlusion zone, which is this wall that has been built that is exclusionary and has the ability to shift and change against people's will, and creates environments that are isolated and disconnected from others, then like you're like, wow, Lena So is a saint. Because like the like what Marchion's doing with the occlusion zone is like a particular evil. So yeah.
I like that you said reframing of "we are all the Republic." I think that's the better way of putting it. It's like it's been reframed given the state of the galaxy. Right. And maybe that messaging did need to change a little bit.
Well, I don't know if the message has actually changed as much as it has been just expanded on here, because, I don't think we'd ever gotten anything like that before. And maybe the galaxy hadn't quite either. I don't know.
as we get farther in and some new power moves are made, whether it be by the Jedi or the Republic Defense Coalition or however that looks, what are some of the casualties of war as well? You know, as we're trying to uphold We Are All the Republic, it's not going to be an easy or clean war. You know, there are going to be casualties along the way. So also, how is Lena So going to juggle some of those things that are happening, whether it's within their borders, outside of their borders, and how is that message going to shift? Because you can only go so far to say we are the Republic, we're united, while there are people suffering on the other side of the storm wall that need action to get taken, right? So like, when are the words? When do we need to go beyond words and into, you know, your actions speak louder sort of territory? Right.
And I got a really bold thought for you, a bit of a tangent, just a bit of like a big timey thought. Very. Yeah. What if we star pieced instead of star ward?
War bad.
Yeah.
To think that is controversial.
War bad. Yeah. Let's not
do that.
Let's not do that. But it, you know, it does look like that is unfortunately what it's coming to in our galaxy far, far away. And yeah, I think that seeing that how that plays out and like how information gets to people behind the occlusion zone will be really compelling, because, you know, all they have are like state sponsored news messaging that from Rill, you know, who has become the subjugated spokesperson. And I do mean that in like, I really do mean that in like, she has been subjugated to do this, and she is the subject of these broadcasts. But like, she has been chosen to do this against her will, and has been attempting to push back against that. But that's all that people have when it comes to the information that they receive, if they receive that at all. I would imagine that, you know, the worlds are quite independent of one another in terms of, or not independent, but disconnected from one another because of the Nihil's rule across the occlusion zone.
I think dark times are ahead. As much as the Nihil were dealt a blow in this one, I think it's not going to be a pretty path.
No.
At all.
No, this is the trials of the Jedi, Brad.
And we're only talking about the Nihil threat, but you know what is probably the threat of all threats, and maybe a threat that if we solve, will solve everything else.
Right, the Drengir.
Yes.
Bring the Drengir back.
One point on the Drengir, you know, Kevin Scott's comic, they got like the mother Drengir and they like put it on Starlight Beacon, I think, or I don't know what they did with it. Where is it?
Right.
Where did it go?
In the ocean.
What if the Drengir get on their side and they just start eating a bunch of Nihil? Who knows?
I mean, isn't that what happened in Race to Crash Point Tower? My favorite book?
Yeah. Anyways,
they were like, you know, he was like tasty meats, and
oh my gosh, yes,
Ram
tasty
Jamaram
meats.
is like, yeah, but the Nihil meats, they betrayed you, and they're really tasty meats too. And the Drengir are like, you're kind of right. They did betray us, and they are tasty meats.
Oh my gosh, I miss the Drengir and their wicked sense of humor.
Yeah, they're great. Anyway, I don't think the Drengir is the key to all of this, Brad. So what is?
Sarah, we got a nameless problem. We got a big nameless problem that we got to solve.
Do you mean a problem we can't name?
Potentially.
No, I think you mean a problem with the nameless.
Yeah.
Not a problem we can't name. We can name it. It's the nameless, which is not really a name. It's the absence of a name, which is maybe part of the problem, as I've talked about in past episodes. But
yeah. And what's where did this problem start? It's when a bunch of eggs got stolen. And that leads us to Egg Talk. It is Egg Talk time. We got some stuff to cover. Again, we were like, how much egg talk is there going to be in this book? It's much more political.
We're like, not much egg talk.
Yeah.
And Brad went through his notes and he's like, egg talk forever. Egg talk is eternal. Egg talk is all I want to talk about.
Yeah. No, I think we got some egg talk here, because we got Aslan Rel in this book. We got Baron Bulin. We got Cybernetic Nameless. We have Children of the Storm. We got Pratre Viter prologue talking about fear. Where to begin? I think we should start with the prologue, because that
Would you like me to dramatically read it?
Yeah. You got it here on the our old 15-page Google Doc.
No, I got it here in.
Oh, you got the print book. Yeah, that's even better. Yeah.
Have you heard about this great invention called paper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like all living things, Grandmaster Pratre Viter had known fear. It was, after all, a natural biological impulse, a reaction to external stimuli that govern the behavior of beings and animals across the entire galaxy. Fear was what kept people safe, a warning system that alerted you when you were in danger, an impulse that urged you to flee, to seek safe ground away from the predators that would do you harm. But fear was also a tool, a weapon wielded by the misguided, an instrument of control. Fear could be applied, sometimes with delicacy and precision, sometimes with the might of a hammer striking stone. Fear could topple even the strongest of individuals and drive entire populations to misery and subservience. Fear could bring down the stars. It was, though, the weapon of cowards. Fear could be overcome. It could be defeated. It could be turned into strength.
So, with that in mind, Phase 3, titled Trials of the Jedi. This is the thesis statement, not only for Phase 3, but like, it's also the High Republic endgame. The High Republic was founded on...
What do the Jedi fear?
It was founded on that question. And here it is. It's what do the Jedi fear? The trial of the Jedi in Phase 3 will be, how can we take fear and turn it into a strength? That's it.
Yeah.
Every Jedi will have to look within themselves to figure out, how do I overcome fear and how do I turn it into strength? And what is the embodiment of fear? It's the Nameless. And that's where we get into Azlin Rel. Azlin Rel is back in the mix. Mm-hmm. He is traumatized. He has seen a lot of stuff. And he comes to the Jedi Council in this book very dramatically, I would say, because Elzar is like talking to the council and he's like, we need to make it clear the Jedi aren't afraid. And like Yoda walks in with a mysterious figure and Yoda goes, but what if we are afraid, Elzar man? What then? And I was like, oh, Yoda dropping bombs right now. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
And Azlin tells the council, the Nameless present the biggest threat to the Jedi that has ever existed, and not just the Jedi, but all those who wield the Force. They are a fundamental challenge to our very existence. They consume the very essence of us. Compared with that, the Nihil are just a bunch of marauders grown too big for their boots. And Elzar reflects some of these words later after he hears them from Azlin. And he says, the threat of the Nameless is not merely physical, but existential. They challenge our very existence, the fundamental tenets of our beliefs, right? So how do the Nameless challenge their right to exist? If the Jedi are scared, what is the point of their existence? If not to bring light and life? If they're scared and they're fearful and they can't function, they can't overcome that fear and turn it into strength, are they peacekeepers? Do they uphold the light? No, they don't. They can't.
But also like the Nameless take away their ability to access the Force or mask their ability to access a Force. And accessing the Force and using the Force is like literally the core tenet of whether you're a Jedi or somebody else in the galaxy. You have to be able to be in tune with the Force in order to do your job and do your calling. And if you aren't in tune with the Force, you have lost the core tenet of your identity.
And I love that Azlin is in the picture right from book 1 of this phase, because if you missed Shadows of Starlight, which shows us his return in that year between Fallen Star and Eye of Darkness,
go read that issue if you are sitting and listening to this episode and you haven't, because holy moly, it's good.
And I wonder like what it feels like for people who didn't read like phase 2, because Azlin's really a kind of glup shitto in a way, because he appears in the young adult books and he appears in Edge of Balance, which is a manga. And so like he wasn't part of, the big adult. If you're just reading the adult books for Del Rey, you would have missed him entirely from phase 2. And if you're not reading the comics, you would have missed him there as well. So What does it mean for people who are getting their first taste of Aslan? And I think we kind of see that through Elzar's eyes when Aslan enters that Jedi Council chambers. He kind of feels this coolness, this detachment, the way he is weighing everybody in the room as a potential threat. And I almost feel that is how the Nameless think, right? They look in the room and they see who is a potential threat. The Jedi are a threat to me. So I consume the Force, right? And so it says, most of all, though, Elzar felt the man's fear. In this room, the man was less predator and more prey, a Tuca cat surrounded by a pack of wolves. And yet, unsettlingly, Elzar felt something familiar with this newcomer too. A tension and uncertainty, a sense of hidden, swirling depths. To Elzar, Aslan was a figure worthy of pity, not scorn, a man who had lost his way and had never found the path home. If he had had somebody like Orla, things might have been different. As much as the idea unnerved him, perhaps he had just been like Elzar, but hadn't had the people around him to help him remain on the true path. Maybe this was Aslan's road to redemption. Was it right to deny him that chance? He was, after all, not an enemy. He was not, after all, an enemy of the Jedi, more a lost brother who had fallen and never been picked back up. And so I find that really fascinating that we're seeing Aslan through Elzar's eyes, and we're already painting him as somebody who shouldn't be ridiculed, but should try to be understood. And you know who else should be understood? The Nameless. And I truly do feel like the way we should treat the Nameless and how we should think of the Nameless is represented through how we should think of Aslan Rel, who is also somebody who kind of embodies fear at this point, much like the Nameless. How do we treat our own brother? You know?
Brad, what have I just done for the listener?
You have stood up, which means something is about to happen, and I'm sitting here with my coffee cup, waiting in anticipation for it.
Okay. Let's go back to this Elzar quote. Right. Let's talk about Elzar a little bit. Elzar, really compelling. We love to talk about how messy he is because he is messy. He is complex. He is a capital P person who has struggled, who has made mistakes, who has had great people around him who have loved him so dearly as to care for him, right? And to ensure that he finds himself on the right track. And he lives with the weight and with the guilt of his mistakes. He knows that his killing of Chancey Yarrow fucked things up for him and for Stellan and for the Republic. He knows this. But also, despite that, and despite losing Stellan and despite everything that's happened, Avar is, as we find out at the end of this book, still cares about him. He is still welcomed in the Jedi by the Jedi. He is still accepted by Lena Stowe. He has been given every chance in the world to do better because the people around him see his intentions. They aren't like letting him go scot-free. They aren't saying, oh, these things didn't happen, but they are saying, this mistake, this thing is not the whole of who you are. And I'm not going to damn you because of it. Aslan, him seeing empathy with Aslan, to me, shows, I think, Elzar's goodness. Because I think that, Elzar could damn him in the same way that he has been, cast off or damned by others, right? He could show that same level of judgment. And he doesn't. And I think that is actually really powerful. And I think that we tend in Star Wars to see good and bad as so black and white. And of course, I'll have to, shameless plug for our favorite Alphabet Squadron. But I think there's something so simple in the morality of a lot of Star Wars. And I don't say that derogatorily at all. I say that it's just it's meant to be easily captured and understood who these people are and what their point of view is. Characters like Elzar and Aslan, all the Z's, really break that mold in compelling ways. And I think that, Aslan, just because Aslan is in touch with the dark side, to me, does not mean that he is evil. or bad. And I think that Elzar is seeing that too. I think he sees that he's made a wrong choice and he's committed to that choice over time, and that maybe it has corrupted him to a degree. But I don't think that he sees him as less than human, as evil, or as someone that he should not associate with because of these things. I think he's saying, okay, I think there's an opportunity here for something better. I think that all goes into the empathy, the humanization, the ultimately it goes into the empathy, the humanization, the better understanding of the Nameless, as opposed to snap judgments and character assessments on things that are different from us or things that we don't understand. Like, I think that's where I'm heading with this point.
That is so that's so perfect, because yes, I think it's like how the Jedi are treating Aslan is going to be representative of how they treat the Nameless, because Aslan and the Nameless are both something to be feared in the eyes of the Jedi.
But why are they feared? Because we don't understand them.
But yeah, exactly. And what happens if we give in to our fear, right? If the Jedi fear Aslan, what happens? They give in to hate. What if they start hating Aslan, Rel? They give in to suffering, right? And they become the thing that they want to avoid, which is going down this dark path. I don't know if I should say I'm shocked, but like Yoda being this character who is an advocate for Aslan, I find very surprising, because he's the oldest on the council. He's the oldest Jedi Master. He's the best of us. He offers wisdom. And here he is saying to the council, forgotten have you. Actually, sorry. Let me go back.
Forgotten have you that Aslan was once a Jedi. He survived the Night of Sorrow all those years ago on Donna.
I can't do it. Face the Nameless. I tried. Face the Nameless he did and lived, dedicated his life to understanding them. He has. His perspective is unique in all the galaxy. Can we afford not to listen to him?
Can we afford to not listen to him?
Yoda's basically saying, like, we have this threat that we don't understand. How are we not willing to listen to somebody who might offer some insight, who might help us understand? And by not offering him that same, that forum, we are thus not understanding Aslan. And it's this thing of the Jedi to not understand the things that they don't understand, to not try. Do or do not, there is no try. And so the Jedi are just doing not. They are saying we are not going to entertain an apostate in our Jedi Council chambers. And Yoda is saying, we can't afford that. We have no other options. And I just think it's really a testament to Yoda and his level of empathy. And I wonder how much of that empathy goes away by the time of the prequels, when you compare Yoda and Aslan sitting in a prison cell, Yoda going through his memories and trying to understand him, to Yoda sitting in a meditation chamber with Anakin and just being like, let go of everything you fear to lose. Bye, buddy. See ya. You know, like where does that go wrong for Yoda?
But also, like, Yoda being like, we can't afford to not listen to him suggests that there are avenues when they would choose not to listen to him. Right? Like we can afford to not listen to him. We've got other people who may lead us to a right path, and they're now saying we're out of options. Here's Aslan Rel. Whereas, like, I do think that Elzar is showing a bit more empathy for Aslan, because he sympathizes with his demise. Whereas, like, I don't think Yoda sympathizes with his demise in the same way. I think Yoda says, like, well, he made a choice and he's stuck with it. And I'm very reluctant in bringing him here, but he's our only hope at this point to understanding.
Do you think redemption is in the cards for Aslan? Do you think that's the ultimate path that we take?
No. Like I think Aslan's path is like, hey, I help you. I give you some information, and then I go take. Then I like what happened in the comic, right? Like, I help you. I get some information, but ultimately, I'm so stuck in my own ways that I will ultimately go against the action plan of the Jedi, because I think that the path to fixing this is different than what you assess it to be. But I also don't necessarily think that, like, Aslan needs to be redeemed. Like, I don't.
Well, in
I
his
don't
own
know.
eyes, he thinks he needs to be redeemed. He thinks he has done so many bad things and made so many dark choices that in his heart, he still carries that fear with him, right? Like he is somebody who is almost devoid of the light at this point. So part of me thinks that maybe we get to a place where Aslan finds the light within himself once again. And because, right, like what's that third gift of the darkness? It is light, according to the Roth's novelization. So if Aslan is somebody who maybe represents darkness, represents fear, and our whole idea is a Jedi overcoming fear, I feel like Aslan overcoming that fear in phase 3 is really sort of an embodiment or like a case study of like, here is this Jedi who experienced awful things against the physical embodiment of fear, the existential embodiment of fear. And he was able to understand them, the Nameless, push back against his own hatred of them and want to defeat them and help in a solution to save them, thus overcoming his fear in the process and embracing the light once more, right? Claudia Gray's last book, what is it called? Into the Light, right? And so maybe this is all a journey of self-discovery for Aslan, and other Jedi around him sort of learn that path as well of like, oh, if Aslan can overcome fear, so can we. Like, here's this character who has been so overridden by it for 150 years.
Yeah, he old.
Right? Like he has been in pain and suffering for so long. And if he doesn't have a chance, what chance do any of us have to overcome fear if he can't?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
I don't know. That's where my mind is at. And I'm obviously like a pro redemptionist in Star Wars. So like part of me
too.
Selfishly really wants him to be, I know we talked a little bit in our phase 3 preview, like, oh, what if he's like the adversary? But I think there will be some of that there, definitely. But I think ultimately he will end up on a path to self-redemption. I think in Elzar's eyes, he's not somebody who needs necessarily redemption. I mean, he does ask, is this his road to redemption? But like, I feel like Aslan wants to right some of the wrongs for himself.
I'll be really curious to see where Aslan's story goes, because he is just a really complicated player, you know, like you add him to the mix and everybody, like you shake the box around a little bit, you know?
Right. Isn't it so exciting? Like the path that we've taken in our discussions to go from who is mysterious hooded figure to, oh, let's talk about this like side character Aslan Rel who could be the key to all of this, to now being like Aslan Rel is the key to all of this. He is in phase 3. He is very old and he is very fearful and he has done some bad things, and he's just a guy who, a good guy that bad things happen to.
He's definitely one of the keys to all of this. Like, I have no doubts about that in my mind. I think that his role is so vitally important to this storyline. I just don't feel confident in like knowing where it's going. And obviously you and I have like a different opinion on that, which I think is great. Like I look forward to seeing it play out.
Yeah. This is not one of those instances where I'm going to make a bet out of it, because I do think there's some complexity, and it could go either way. I hope it goes the way of redemption.
Brad's not here to embarrass Sarah today. Or make cheer.
One thing I do think we're very solid and confident in is the idea of the Nameless, and that they need to be understood. That's pretty clear based on Trail of Shadows, based on this book, talking about understanding the Nameless. And, if we solve that, we solve everything else. And we got to talk about the Nameless and the Leveler for a bit here, because in that prologue that you had read, when Marchion Ro brings the Leveler into the room, into Patre Vider's cell, it's mentioned that Vider is already in the husking process, I guess, but it was like somehow being slowed down.
Well, I mean, that's what we got with the mother as well. Like, she was slowly rotting away.
Yes. And it says here, he had heard it, the Leveler, howling, straining at its electrified leash, trying to reach him, breaking its own bones in utter desperation and hunger as he was thrown back into his cell, slipping into a deep, disturbed unconsciousness. So as we try to think of understanding the Nameless, as we think of Bell saying, light in life means all light in life, like if not that, then what does that truly mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have these beings who have been taken from their home, and I think I didn't realize it until now, they literally lack a food source. It's animal cruelty. They
Yeah.
have no other choice than to feed on Jedi, than to feed on the Force, because they are out of their natural environment. They have
And
no
the Force,
food.
right? The Force is a Force nexus, like that
Right.
Planet X.
And Marchion Ro is literally dangling carrots in front of them saying, oh, you want it? Hey, by the way, I have a rod that controls you that allows you to feed. You don't have a choice in when you feed. I have the choice of when you feed. I supply the food for you. I think like we're moving to a place where it's about like animal rights in Star Wars, you know? It's like legitimately, how do we treat these beings? And I hope the Jedi get to that point as well to understand, oh, the Nameless have been taken from their home. They have no home to return to right now. Or they do, but they haven't been. We got to help them. That's their motive. They have no choice. That's why they're feeding on us.
Right. I think it's an understanding of other beings and like a cause for empathy. But yeah, like if the planet is a Force nexus, then like it is, as it is, sustaining the life of the beings on it in one way or another. Like it has special properties of existence. And being taken from that and just begin to wither away. Maybe they themselves are, husking as well because they have no access to, or rather a highly controlled access to their food source, which is the Force. Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, I think at this point we're pretty set in stone on what the end game is, at least in our point of view, which is understanding that they've been taken from their home and returning them. It's not destroying them. It's putting them back in the environment where both they and the Republic will be safe. But that is a daunting task, as we learned in, Quest to Planet X and Path of Vengeance, that these are not like easily accessible, easily doable. And that presents a trial because you have to face your fear to like be in close proximity with them, to go to the place where they're from, to potentially not return, all that sort of stuff. So I feel like everything we read I mean, we're also so set in this way that I don't know what would like completely change our mind and be like, no, they have to be destroyed. But I feel like everything we read leads us in the direction that we have identified as what we think is the path towards the resolution of the story.
Yeah, totally. And I think StarWars.com confirming that tease was in Master and Apprentice is lining up. Okay, we know the sin.
Makes me feel crazy. But go ahead.
We know the sin. How do we cleanse it? Right. And that's the next question. Right. And I think we're both pretty confident that it is returning them to their planet, giving them back their food source, their way of life. We learn more from this article as well that Baron Bulin is doing these experiments on the Nameless. He is adding cybernetics to them to have them be enhanced and upgraded. And not only that, but there's these people called Children of the Storm. And Bulin is experimenting on Force users, transforming them into vicious hunters. And then those hunters are going to kidnap young Force sensitives that they can continue to add to their genetically mutated number. And each of those hunters gets paired up with one or more Nameless. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, that's it's like really bad. Actually, it makes me feel really bad.
We see one of those Children of the Nameless, or Children of the Storm, excuse me, in Kevin Scott's newest comic line in the first issue.
Okay, Sarah, that's like Sarah reads your damn comics.
What happens when you give in to fear? Along comes the Children of the Storm with a Nameless. You succumb to the fear, and then you become the next iteration of the Children of the Storm. You get genetically mutated, you get experimented upon, and then you become something that you don't recognize, but that you had sworn to destroy. You literally like become fear incarnate. And I wonder which of our missing presumed dead Jedi are included in those numbers.
Don't do that to me.
Where is Lula Talisola?
No.
Where is Imri?
No.
Where is Imri?
No.
Imri.
I refuse to hear it.
But like a test of courage, the whole thing in that book was Imri gave in to fear. Where is he?
But those are my baby childs.
Where is Farzala?
We can't. No,
where is Buckets of Blood?
No. Buckets of Blood is probably
I'm telling you now, somebody we know is going to be one for that to have stakes and for that to matter. we need to
Yeah,
have an
I know.
emotional, we need to have an emotional crisis about it, you know? Like otherwise it's just like, oh, why do I care about these children of the storm? I mean, they're
Who do I have to pull up the like, damn you, High Republic author? Like, you know, who am I gonna have to pull it up for? Who's gonna deal that final blow of like it being somebody I love? Yeah. Do we know based on the way that the comic is laid out, who that child of the storm is? If it's somebody that we do know, or are they unrecognizable to us or unidentified?
I forget what the name there's a name that they're referred to by, but they're on the cover of the comic. They have like a mask on their front, and then they're holding a Nameless with them on a leash. Oh, actually in the comic they are like slinging around green vines. So people think that they are one of the species that was on the Convocation of the Force in Jeddah. In phase 2, because we saw that in Cap's comic as well at that point.
Guys. So. If you haven't seen this cover, doesn't feel good. It feels bad, actually. Wow. Interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. And I do get scared. And I we got High Republic Adventures #1 coming out next week. Zine, I'm imagining her and Court are I think maybe Farzala is alive. I can't remember. No, it is Court. It's Court. It's grown up Court. Yeah.
He's
her
not
and
a baby
Court
boy
are trying
anymore.
to find their friends. And what's going to happen when they do find their friend? What is that going to unveil to them?
I'm going to choose not to think about that.
I'm just not going to read it. Just kidding. I can't. I have to read it.
Adventures is very important to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Children of the Storm plot feels like it resembles things we've seen before, just like in the structure of the Tempest, but also within the path of the Open Hand, of course.
Inquisitors, yeah.
I don't know if I have anything to add other than just like resigned fear and disappointment and like, oh no. Yep. I guess we'll see how those stories pan out. Yeah. Okay. That's all I got. That's all I got on that one. Sorry, Brad.
I really hate Baron Bulin. I think is the ultimate conclusion here. He is our Star Wars' version
Bulin.
of Dr. Frankenstein. You know,
he's awful.
And he's got assistants here too on StarWars.com. We have Reek, who is a small creature, and he's an Ewok-sized rodent-like assistant who we'll meet in future issues of Cavan's comic. And then we also have Niv Drendau Apruk, who is Bulin's protege. And I believe, he appears in Escape from Valo, which is our next book.
Okay. Upcoming. All right.
Which gets me a little worried because we know Escape from Valo follows some young Force-sensitive kids.
And their baby Nexu.
And what do the Children of the Storm want? Young Force-sensitive kids.
Don't say that to me.
So actually, I'm a little scared now.
Yeah. Don't say such things. Take it back.
Oh boy. I think as we're moving to our odds and ends here, we have one odd and end that I guess ties into the Nameless and what's next for the Nameless and what to expect. So do we want to start with that one? Do we want to save it for last? How are we feeling? That's a pretty exciting odds and ends.
I support you in whatever you would like to do on this odd and end.
You have it on your odds and ends, so I'll leave it to you. What do we want to start with here? For those of you who don't know, odds and ends are things we didn't get to in the episode, but want to quickly shout out because we either thought it was interesting, funny, scary, you name it. It's like a rapid fire section. Here we go. Sarah, what are you thinking? What should we start with?
Let's start with this one.
Okay.
And this is, and we're on the same page that this is a particular tease, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Tears of the Nameless, guys. There's a whole book called Tears of the Nameless. It's not called Tears of the Nameless. It's called Tears of the Nameless. Upcoming, written by George Mann. And on our interview with him, he said, obviously no spoilers and we are not asking for them either. But he was like, I am giving people a 3-word tease. And we're like, okay, let's go. And he's like, Aslan, Wreath, Fear.
We're so back, baby.
We're so back, baby. Obviously, Aslan, this complicated character that we find to be really compelling. Reith, our sweetest baby boy who did not sign up for any of this adventure but has gone on it anyway. He loves his books. He loves to research. Comac Vetus, gone. Orla, gone. Dax Raiden, gone. Where is Reith in all of this? Fear. We know all about Fear. I feel like we're going to learn some more about Fear. We know that Reith and Emmerich Kaftor are together, and Emmerich goes into
Trail of Shadows.
Trail of Shadows. I couldn't figure out the T word. I was gonna say like Trial of Shadows. I was like, that's not right. Trail of Shadows. They've been quote searching the records for clues in the old stories. Right now, there are teams of Jedi poring over that horrific footage. We await their conclusions, and while we're frustrated and a long way from many answers, this is the most information on the creatures we've been able to glean in almost a year. That must lead to something we can use against them. So they're doing some academic work. Heck yeah.
Yes.
Here.
We know Reith loves the archives too. That's his favorite place.
Right,
so he's
right.
he's in his own right now, you know?
Right. This is good for Reith. Unfortunately, it has to come, what he's looking up is traumatic events, but like he's not on an adventure right now, which is great. Keep him at home. Let him have a rest. But also Yoda tells Lena, so with the help of Aslan and through the dedication of Jedi such as Reith and Emmerich, we will soon know the truth. And Lena's going to allocate Republic Defense Coalition troops to help with the Nameless problem. That scares me a little bit in terms of manpower to the Nameless problem. How are we? That doesn't lean itself to seeking understanding, but I'm not convinced that that will be the end game here. But like Aslan, Reith, potentially Emmerich, Fear, the title Tears of the Nameless, I think that is going to be the juicy book to watch out for.
100%. I think this and Temptation of the Force are my top 2 books for next year. I'm so effing excited for this one.
My thing is, I don't think there's been a single book in phase 3 where I'm like, based on what I've heard, I don't know how I feel about this one. Every single one I've heard anything about, I'm like, yes, give me more. I love it. Like Avon
I'm excited
Saros
for them
is
all.
jumping to YA. Like I'm like, I want every single one of these stories. So, but yeah, I think that Tears of the Nameless and Temptation of the Force are the ones that I've like got my eye on most. And in getting that little tease about Tears of the Nameless has really just set the gears turning, I think, in our heads about where this is going to go.
And I know George didn't say Emmerich as one of those words, but I'm going to imagine that Emmerich will appear in Tears of the Nameless as well, if he is with
based
Reith,
on the quote,
right?
Yeah.
And I do wonder if there is a Trail of Shadows second run in the works, if that's something that will come along where maybe we can get some of that backstory with Reith and with Emmerich and how they came together and how they sort of first approached the problem. Maybe some of the research they've uncovered before Tears of the Nameless. So like, those are things I really want to learn about. And I hope we get more Trail of Shadows. I'm fingers crossed. I'm not setting my expectations high, but I'm hoping.
Right. I'm there with you. I'd love to see more of that in that backstory. We love our academic nerds. Like,
yeah,
we love our detective sort of guys, for sure. But yeah, I think that, I know my tone is like kind of chill right now, but I'm really freaking out about that. Like, I'm so excited for it, but it's so far away. I have to keep the energy a little bit low so I don't live every day from now until then in just like complete despair. But yeah,
no, I feel that.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
You don't have to anticipate a book if you can't be if you're not overly excited about it. And then it's just here magically at some point. You're like, oh, cool.
And then we're like, oh shit. Yeah, let's go, buddy. And then we cry reading the entire thing.
Oh, can't wait. Cannot wait.
Yep. Look forward to it.
My odds and ends here is an Andor quote.
It's an Andor quote.
Yeah. We have a quote here. I forget who says it. But I think it was maybe like Bellin or Avar, but it says, the Nihil here on Daedus were typically ignorant. Oh, this is a Porter quote. They were so arrogant, so self-satisfied that they'd practically blinded themselves to the possibility that someone might be sneaking around right under their noses. And it made me think of Luthen and Cassian talking where Cassian says, they're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. So fat and satisfied, they can't imagine it. And Luthen's like, can't imagine what? And Cassian says that someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear. And Luthen's like, that arrogance is unremarkable, isn't it? They don't even think about us. And I just love that. I love the whole idea of like, you're so caught up in your own arrogance that you miss the one glaringly obvious thing. And it's why Avar gets out of the occlusion zone. It's why she sneaks out right under Marchion's nose. And it's why he's so pissed about it now. So I love that. I love that so much. A little Andor tie-in right there, whether intentional or not.
Anytime we can bring Andor into it, let's do it. That's just how it goes.
Totally.
I have to compliment you for this one because you wrote this note, and I'm just gonna read it because it's good. You ready? Utapau, it's gone.
No.
Utapau, we got a note that Utapau was with the Stormwall expansion brought into the Stormwall, and I was like, no, not Utapau. But I just thought that Utapau was really funny. So thank you for the funny note in there.
Like comic book pow sound effects, word art. Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. I have one that is just about Rupert Natani. She got a shout out because it was said that Porter used to have sparring sessions with Rupert. So they used to be friends, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think that was after she was knighted too. So I just love the little shout out there from George, who wrote Quest for the Hidden City, which features Rupert, and he wrote the short story and Tales of Light and Life about Rupert too. So of course she's going to get a shout out in this book.
Right. And Rupert's such a sweetie. We like Rupert.
Where is the shield? Where is the shield of Shalandra Show is my question.
Where is it? Tell me. Anyway, while we wait to hear about that, I do have a cute one about Buryaga and Ember, right? The two of them grow closer over time, but at least 3 times a day, Burry accidentally set his fur alight trying to snuggle her. Ember the Charhound, sweetest baby girl to ever have existed in the Star Wars galaxy. Her fur, just I guess, is a flame at all times. Not just breathing fire, but being fire. I mean, we're talking about good dog parenting. When you're on a walk with your pup, you want them to heel. But wouldn't your leg be hot all the time? I don't know. It doesn't sound so pleasant. But, Ember's never done anything wrong in her life. Sorry, but that's on Burry.
I love that so much, though. Like the Burry, Ember, Bell trio, one of the most legendary in all of Star Wars.
They're precious, and I just want to hug them and kiss their foreheads.
I hope we get a lot more Burry. Like, we got a lot of Bell perspective, which I wanted so much, and I love. I also want just like more Burry too in all of this. I want to see him do some cool stuff, be there for people, emotional support. I love them all. Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Good little Wookiee. He went through a lot in that cave under the ocean.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
My next one here is Yoda BFF. Yoda BFF of my life.
Yoda BFF. I was about to say that, but you just did it. But it's true in both ways.
We finish each other's sandwiches. Yep.
Sentences. I got the joke, I promise.
Gira and not Gira. Lina So and Yoda are chatting after the defeat in the storm wall when all the ships blow up and everything. And I just thought it was interesting to see Yoda comfort Lina the same way that we saw him comfort Keon Greylark in Phase 2. So Yoda seems to have like this sort of empathetic nature about him, maybe more so than we give him credit for. And we kind of see that, like I said, it with Aslan Rel a little bit. But I just thought it was cool how he's always befriending the chancellors, not necessarily from like a purely strategic way, but from like a very like friendly point of view and like a way of guidance and wisdom and sharing that with somebody who's a political figure. I think it's us seeing the blending and symbiotic relationship of the Republic and the Jedi in a good, positive way versus like the war way that we see in the prequels and somewhat with this and with the Guardian protocols. So
Now, if you know me, you know that when we think about the Rising Storm, we just don't think about the death of Floating Greatstorm. We think about Tiatun.
Yes.
And the politics of the Rising Storm and how interesting that all was. Now, Shrike mentions the Nihil have technology to prevent a Jedi's lightsaber from working. Now, where do we remember that, folks? Oh, from the Rising Storm and Mantessa Chekat, who visited Valo with her daughter to sell this nullifier technology to none other than Tiatun for the defense program, right? Like it basically like disrupts the energy in the lightsabers and blasters and things, so they can't shoot the laser energies, right? We kind of thought maybe this kind of went nowhere, right? Because Mantessa was killed, but here we are, and there's a nullifier with the Nihil. So somehow this has fallen into the wrong hands. So we can blame Tiatun for all of this.
But wait, is Tiatun kind of the key to all of this is my question? Because if it weren't for Tiatun wanting the nullifier would have never made it to Valo, which is, I think, where it got stolen. Yep. And then the Nihil would have never used it to get Pratre Viter, and then Pratre Viter would have never been executed, which never would have given the Jedi their best look at the Nameless, and never would have led to Pratre Viter being a martyr for the Republic to make them want to go on the offensive a little bit. So maybe a little bit of a butterfly effect there, if not for the nullifier.
Right.
Maybe things would look a lot different.
I think so.
You know?
Tiatun,
wild to think about
this.
Yeah. My last one here too is the lightning crash station. So we didn't talk about it a lot, but the storm wall gets expanded quite a bit, and Marchion mentions contacting the lightning crash station. So I imagine this is a place he will see again. This is probably where everything gets controlled and where you could probably shut down the occlusion zone and all the storm seeds and everything. So my question is going to be, who leads a strike on this lightning crash station? Where is it? And who makes it back?
Who makes it back?
It's giving like Scarif. Got to go to Scarif. Got to get the plans. Got to have my cereal taken on and on. Everybody's going to the bus stop. It's Friday, and we're going to the lightning crash station to not die.
Got to get down on Friday.
Yeah. I don't know why my brain went there, but we're 3:15 in. This is a new point for us. Usually it's the 1:15, the 2:15. This is the first time 3:15.
3:15 changes things.
Yeah, it changes the game.
Yeah.
It might be a little different time in the edit, but who knows? It might be
right.
You know.
Hopefully like 2:30. Edit it down big time, Brad. Just kidding.
Will we see the lightning crash station in like Defy the Storm? Maybe.
Ooh.
You know, with Avon Steros, because she's a tech person, so maybe she can shut it down from the inside.
Ooh.
Who knows? That'd be kind of cool.
That would be kind of cool. We'll see. I look forward to it.
We are at the end of our discussion here for Eye of Darkness. We've gone through so many things. We've talked about so much. This might be one of our longest episodes to date.
And yet, I really don't think we talked about everything in this book. So why?
We missed quite a bit, probably. Still, like there is only so much we can contain and give a lot of thought and detail to, and that's what we love doing here. Maybe there's things we'll come back to and revisit in future episodes as we get like other perspectives on them. But do you have any final closing thoughts as we wrap up here?
My final closing thoughts are just that this was, I think, a strong introduction back into phase 3. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back with you, Brad. And I hope that our listeners enjoyed coming on this exceptionally long conversation with us, and will continue to join us as we go through phase 3. It's some of my very, 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 very most favorite memories. I've been talking to you and with you about the High Republic. So I look forward to more of that as phase 3 continues. And I'm grateful that we have these books to keep us loving Star Wars like this.
Thanks, pal. And for those of you who can't see it, our audio listeners, Sarah's doing a heart and her computer makes these fireworks go off on the Zoom call, which is spectacular. And now there's hearts on the screen.
The fireworks for the thumbs up, and then the heart. I have hearts coming out of my heart that I make with my hands. It's
incredible,
weird and unsettling, but also a little cool sometimes.
Yeah. Well, what's also going to be cool sometimes is all the books that we have coming up.
Right, because they're all spread out now. So only sometimes.
Only sometimes. Exactly. That's where I was going. Next up, we got Escape from Valo by Daniel Jose Older and Alyssa Wong. So we cannot wait to read that. We are in the month of December. Comes out January 30th. Hopefully we're getting some arcs soon because I need to devour that thing right away. I want to be with Ram Jamaram. I miss him so much. I miss him. V8. I miss V8, the purple box droid that can have rockets on it and ride it around. Oh, gosh. I miss the gang. I miss the bomb bracks. I miss them all.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Cannot wait. But if you want to hear more from us, again, we cover every single High Republic book that's out there. Young adult, middle grade, adult. So get ready. Phase 3 is going to be a ride these next 2 years. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. And the Acolyte next year.
And most the likely. Acolyte. Like, Acolyte's probably going to come out in the middle of all this, which is like weird and wild and crazy and amazing and exciting.
I feel like if we get like Temptation and then Tears and then the Acolyte premieres, like within like, sequentially, I'm just gonna be devouring Star Wars. I'm just gonna not know what to do with my hands or my mind, and I'm just gonna be like,
right, like tattooed on my forehead, like I'm thinking about the High Republic right now.
It's gonna consume my very soul and essence.
Yeah,
it's gonna be absolutely who I become. Yeah, not that it already hasn't, but But if you want to hear more from us on all of those exciting things up ahead, follow us on our socials, Twitter, Letterboxd, Goodreads, where Sarah and I are at personally, YouTube, Blue Sky, you name it. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe wherever you're listening. Drop a review if you enjoyed the episode. Tell us what you loved about it. 5 stars are appreciated and welcomed. Helps other folks find the show and join our discussion. Because we know a lot of you out there love these episodes and love listening to our book discussions. And
we're so grateful.
It seems like we pick up a lot of new listeners through High Republic episodes. It seems to be the common thing we hear. So the more you share helps other folks too. Join the unhinged discussions that we have.
Right. And we're here to spread the egg talk theory far and wide. No, but seriously, we're really grateful that you've joined us in these discussions, and thank you to anybody who takes the time to listen, because we know these episodes are no small commitment. So, yeah. Oh my gosh. Star Wars. Okay. I want to thank our patrons as well who help keep the lights on the podcast. So thank you to Ben, Brian, Cheryl, Clay, Deborah, Emma, Huang, Jennifer, Katie, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Logan, Lucy, Lindsay, Matthew, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Santa, Sky Talker, Stephen, Tom, Travis, and our newest patron, AJ. Thank you all so much for your support of the show. We do very much appreciate it. I hope that you are all staying warm and healthy and happy this holiday season.
Absolutely. So thank you all once again for listening. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.